I know Jimmy Conyer said he was going to come in person, and he got stuck on the causeway. Of course, I don't know why it took me 30 minutes to get from Fish River here today, so traffic is not great anywhere, apparently. I'm going to go ahead and open our call our meeting to order, the November 5th, 2020 Fairhope Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The first item on the agenda is I was requested to call roll, so I'll go ahead and do that at this time. Art,
present.
Here. Harry Kohler,
Here.
John Worsham,
Here.
Holly McAleer.
Here.
No, you're here. We heard you earlier. Clarice, I don't think Clarice is here. And I know Jimmy Conyers is on the way, so I'll mark him. And then Rebecca, I see you there. I'm looking for the.
Hey,
and
Rebecca.
Then, and then Rebecca. And then I'm missing. And then Jason. Are you here, Jason?
Jason is here. He can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. All right, we will go ahead. I just saw our mayor, Sherry Sullivan, walk in. Sherry, welcome. We're very glad to have you with us tonight. And I'd like to go ahead, the first item on the agenda, I would like to go ahead and ask for a motion. Everybody has had the August 3rd minutes for a couple of days. Any changes that need to be made to those minutes? If so, bring those up at this time. If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes.
I moved that we approved minutes of, you want both of them?
Let's just do one at a time. I guess.
October 3rd, 2020.
August 3rd.
August 3rd.
All
Excuse
right,
me.
I've got a motion to approve the August 3rd minutes as is. Do I have a second?
I second that.
All right, that's second by John. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously, and I will do a roll call if we have any nays. So if you are a nay on anything, let me know, and I'll go ahead and in that case do a roll call. Otherwise, to save time, we'll simply just go with the ayes. Next, the October 5th minutes. Are there any changes that need to be made to the October 5th minutes? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve those.
So moved.
I've got a motion
second
to
it.
approve the October 5th and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. All right, first item on the agenda is ZC 20.05. This is a zoning change on Greeno Road. Hunter?
There we go. Yep, that's the one.
Hello, James. How you doing?
Okay. The councilman always sits in the far.
I wouldn't get close to him.
That works.
You don't want to sit back there.
I can get recess. Are we shared? Okay. Okay. All right. We've got this now pulled up, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to move along with case number ZC 20.05, zoning request change from R1 to B2 at 520 North Greeno Road. A summary real quick. Don Dowsey, Penny Odom, and Sandra Lee have a request to rezone property from R1 low-density, single-family residential district to B2 general business district. The property is approximately 0.73 acres and is located on the east side of Greeno Road between Dyer Road and Gayfer Avenue at 520 North Greeno Avenue. On the left, you can see our zoning map highlighted in the middle is the subject property. On the right, you can see an aerial with the property line shown in blue. This is currently a single-family residential, as shown on the graphic on the screen. Can I get someone to mute the dog barking in the background, please?
Cut that, Lee.
Thank you. All right, comments on this case. The applicant states that the property is no longer conducive for residential use, and this is therefore justification for their request. There are no proposed plans for this property at this time. There is currently a vacant single-family dwelling on the property with a carport, storage building, and shop. It is bounded on to the north by R1. To the south and east by PUD, and to the west by B2. Commercial property along Greeno Road has long been a source of debate. The city's comprehensive plan reflects. It is also clear that the people of Fairhope do not desire to continue commercialization of Greeno Road that will leave Fairhope to be like most other places throughout the country. Since 2001, the comprehensive explored a village concept, with village cores containing the highest intensity of uses. The nearest core to this subject piece of property is the Greeno Road Village Center, and which radiates from the intersection of Greeno Road and Fairhope Avenue. The subject site does not fall within the area of influence as shown on the map within the comprehensive plan as approved of the Greeno Road Village Center. In the comp plan, there is also, as an implementation of the improved plan, subject of guidelines, and this was 2006, I believe. Guidelines, and the recommendation was to consider the creation of design guidelines for commercial development along Greeno Road that addresses items such as parking placement on site, build-to lines, drive-through location screening, pedestrian connectivity, and bicycle racks, among other things. This has not been done to date, so first step on the criteria, compliance with a comprehensive plan, it does not meet, B2 does not meet the intent of the comprehensive plan, and staff has a recommendation of denial for ZC 20.05.
Thank you, Hunter. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on behalf of the applicant?
How about a question for Hunter?
Yes, sir.
Hunter, I know you've not been here for an extremely long period of time. Well, let me tell you about the use of the argument that the comprehensive plan is the cat's meow for what we do and we don't do on Greeno Road. That's been the case since 1972. And there has been such a disservice and an inequity to everybody up and down Greeno Road, it's silly. So with that said, I will say also that it is imperative to consider that we busted our ears trying to talk to the landowners along Greeno Road to try to see if there was a way to put a corridor program together. And it was obvious that met a real debacle from the very south end of Greeno Road, but it's done nothing for these people up here. And it's just, I don't like using the word, it isn't fair, but by darn, if we're not gonna do anything for these people, then buy their property. Anybody that's opposed to the zoning, let them buy the property. It's stupid, if you want, for me to be just blunt about it. It is ridiculous to force this on these people. There's no residential demand at all on Greeno Road, except for maybe multifamily.
Thank you for the clarification. There might not be the single family.
That's right.
Is there a use here that's more appropriate with B2? I think so. And as you see, what we do is a recommendation. This commission.
Okay. Well, I'm with you. I just need to make that
keeps
real
going.
clear before we get into it.
Yeah, and I know it was recognized in 2006, and I recognize it, and you recognize it tonight. It's long been a source of debate. There has been a comfort level when PUDs come in that has some control over the development and some residential, and we've got one on next month's agenda that's a PUD. B2 has a list of uses and no controls. And that is the source of contention for my recommendation of denial.
Well, what's not shown on this map right here is the PUDs that we've already approved right north of here, where the trailer park used to be.
Which is a residential.
Let me say this, Art, I can't argue with one thing that you say at all. Nothing can argue with. However, I can tell you, I've been on here for 20 years, and for 20 years, we've tried to do simple protections so that when we rezone land on Greeno Road, that we don't end up like Foley, just south of 98. So we don't end up like Hamburger Alley and Daphne's, Robertsdale, any of these places that you look at, anywhere USA with the, 4 lanes of traffic and the death lane down the middle and the 2 parking lanes making 7 lanes. We've tried to not do that. The most recent we did was the Greeno Road overlay that we went out, did back bends,
Tell me about it.
took everything out that people were bothered by, most of the issues that people were bothered by, such as grandfathering, we made better. Still hasn't been in front of city council. We've had, 4 other times we've done this and hasn't been in front of city council. When we do all these issues, nobody that owns residential land on Greeno Road comes out and stands up for us. Nobody tries to help us understand that we're trying to set it up so we can rezone on Greeno or protect the citizens who have said that they don't want Greeno Road to look like everywhere else USA. And people come out from Greeno and say, hey, if you don't have land on Greeno, you shouldn't be able to vote. Well, what about my 5 pieces of property in downtown Fairhope? Should I be able to build a 12-story condo in downtown Fairhope and say, hey, none of you own property in downtown Fairhope, why should you be able to vote to stop me? I mean, it's ludicrous. Everybody has ownership in downtown Fairhope. Everybody's got to suffer through Greeno Road. Everybody who drives on it looks at it. It's the corridor. It's what makes Fairhope Fairhope. So I agree with what you're saying, that is obviously not residential land and it obviously needs to be rezoned commercial. But why can't we just put a few minor changes, just 2 or 3 little miniature ordinances to keep things from going crazy to where Greeno Road looks horrible, but people still can get their commercial. And that's what I haven't understand why we can't do that, those simple little fixes. I mean, the people with the Greeno Road overlay that I talked to, I'd say, John, just not making a name up, what don't you like in the Greeno Road overlay after we've done all these changes? And the answer is, well, I just don't like more regulations.
Regulation, that's it. That's the only
And I
thing.
say, well, hey, maybe I'd like to open a strip bar in downtown Fairhope. I mean, look what happened when somebody wanted to open a tattoo place. I'm being facetious and I don't. But I mean, people always say they don't like regulations until the regulation prevents something that they don't like, and then they like the regulation. But I understand with what you're saying.
Okay, and let me back up and just,
But we've allowed PUDs, and I would vote for this in a heartbeat if it was a PUD.
what the difference here is right south of the multi-family apartment complex, right south of there, what have we done? We got a bank and a bank and a bank and a bank and another bank.
Which is under a PUD that has a.
I understand, but it's still a commercial property, and what we've got, and we've got to figure out how to help these kind of people on Greeno Road. What's right north of them? There's nothing north of them but the Auburn Experiment Station. Okay, so you've got 3 properties on Greeno Road right there, 3 small lots that don't have any demand for residential and they can't use it. So come up with okay, then let me put it this way. Come up with a plan. Don't let them come in here and say, I want to do this, and then we're going to say, no, you can't do it, and not give them an alternative.
Well, we did come up with a plan on it. Where is it?
What is it?
The Greeno Road overlay.
Well, I'm sorry, but you've got everybody to the south don't want the Greeno Road overlay. And if they don't want it to the south, because they already got theirs, you understand that, right? Yeah, they got theirs down there, but they don't care about anybody else. It's a real, and I'm sorry, but it is a real bone of contention to me. My family went through this for 42 years.
I understand. I've been on both sides.
Okay,
As a real estate.
so let's figure out how to help them. And what we could suggest to them, Hunter, to get them into a program that they can do something with these 3 lots on Greeno Road. Those people, let me say one other thing about the overlay district. These people came to the meetings. They came to the meetings. I sat down and talked to them. They came to the meetings. And what happened? You got, like I said, you got everybody in the south that just deep 60.
Well, let's go ahead and let them make a presentation here from the other commissioners. And I felt pretty comfortable with my vote before I heard you, Art. Now I'm fixed again. Let's go ahead. Did anybody here wish to speak on behalf of the developer, or the owner, I should say?
I know we have.
Dowsey, Odom, Lee, anybody here, or to anybody online that wishes to speak on behalf of the owner?
Chairman, they did request to be invited, so give us a second to see what they said.
Cool. If we have an issue, we need to drop them to the bottom of the agenda and call and make sure.
You're also gonna, I can tell you, you're gonna have to call the roll on this one.
Donna Dowsey, Penny Odom, and Sandra Lee.
If it pleases the board, can you hear me?
What was that?
Yes, if it pleases the board, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is, my name is Danny Lee. I'm the husband of Sandra Lee, one of the property owners. And we do have some comments, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
As you know, this property, I think we stated in our request that it's in an estate. My father-in-law passed away about almost 2 years ago, and we've been trying to close the estate. Well, in order to close it, we must sell the property, so we put it on the market. It's been on the market for 9 months. The only interest we've got out of anyone is commercial, B2, and I think it was 2 potential buyers asked if they could buy and renovate the house in order to make it an office for each of these buyers. Well, without the B2 zoning, they would not purchase the property until it was rezoned.
What type of an office were they concerned in? Because offices fit under B4 as well.
I beg your pardon, I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, I was asking what type of office they were interested in, because offices typically fit under B4 as well.
Yeah, this was just a, not a home office, but just a renovated house in order to put their office in it, and I didn't get a clarification on what kind of office it was. The problem being, we can't renovate the house and do anything with it residentially because it is not, I guess, desired. And if we put a lot of money into it to try to make repairs on the house, we're just going to sink a lot of money in it for nothing. Whereas we had a couple of interested parties that would do that, provided it was commercial.
All right, I appreciate it. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant at this time? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Lee. And by the way, this is a rezoning, and a zoning is an ordinance. So in this case, the Planning and Zoning Commission will simply make a recommendation to the City Council. So the City Council will ultimately make the final vote. Jimmy Conyers is the only one among us that will actually have a vote that counts, and that'll be, you know, eventually sometimes the City Council people will vote when they sit on the Planning and Zoning. Sometimes they'll abstain and hold their vote for whenever it gets to council. So tonight we'll simply open the public hearing and close the public hearing, and then we will make a vote for a recommendation. So I appreciate your presentation, and if you'll just stay close by, if somebody may have a question to ask you after I close the public hearing. So thank you, Mr. Lee.
Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate any consideration.
Yes, sir. At this time, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. This is just north of Arbor Gates on Greeno Road. It's a single-family residence that's kind of a little cutout right there by Arbor Gates that the request is to rezone from R1 to B2. Would anybody wish to speak to this item? All right, I'll go ahead at this time and close the public hearing, and I will turn the meeting over to the commissioners at this time.
I've got a question, Hunter. If this is denied, do they have to wait a year to come back? Huh?
Yes, sir.
They do?
Yes, sir.
They have to wait a year? Mm-hmm. Familiar with that little program. All right.
I do want to reinforce a lot of the, throughout, I wasn't here for the whole Green Road override, but a lot of the discussion I was, and the things that we're worried about typically fall within B2 zone. You know, things like drive-throughs that create traffic problems, those are in B2. If the desire here is for office, B4 is more appropriate and doesn't have the risk of B2.
That's what I'm thinking. They could
They
renovate
didn't
the house.
request that.
They could renovate the house as an office under B4, and they would not then, have a year to wait if some, B2 came back or they wanted to present something with a specific tenant with some kind of a deed restriction.
I know, Lee, but they didn't request it. Now, they could table it, they could change the request, they could do whatever. But I don't think it's our place to give them a zoning classification that they have not requested.
That's correct. We can't.
I know we
They
can't.
have to make that request from us, and that can come in the form we can table, and they can make that request if so desired, or it can go all the way through as B2.
Do they have to request us to table it? Ken? No, we can just do it?
What if Mr. Lee requested during the meeting B4? Or
You can continue, you can table it for further discussion on your own motion and vote.
I'm not trying to be difficult, but I'm just pointing it out so we don't step on ourselves. He represents one of the three owners. Okay, go ahead.
I would just feel a lot more comfortable with this at B4 than B2.
I understand.
I'd vote against it at B2, but I'd vote for it on B4. And I don't know how the other commissioners feel. I don't want to punish somebody for, the overlay not going through and for us sitting on our hands for 20 years. But on the other hand, I hate to punish the citizens who, have always said they don't want Greeno Road to look like everywhere USA. So it's just, it's the most difficult. This has always been the most difficult issue we've dealt with for 20 years that I've been on the planning and zoning. We talk about it, and then we never do anything about it.
Maybe we ought to take up a collection in the city and let everybody chip in and we'll buy these properties and leave them for the city.
It'd be great.
Mr. Chairman, to answer Commissioner Dias' question, there's 4 options. You can vote recommend approval with conditions, recommend denial, and I think one you may be interested in is the 4th one. Continued discussion of the application for further study. The application shall only be continued one time without the applicant's consent. So
Without the applicant's
The planning
consent.
commission can continue this with further study.
One time.
One time.
Okay, I got it.
Commissioners Art and I have talked a good bit. What are y'all's feelings?
I would say that I certainly appreciate the comments both of y'all have made, and you're touching on a bigger issue, and it's unfortunate that these individuals are falling into the middle of that. And that issue is the citizens have spoken very clearly about their wishes to not have Hamburger Alley or Airport Boulevard, whatever you may call it, become that section of 98 through Fairhope on Greeno. At the same time, when you try to move forward with the Greeno Road overlay, it was rebuffed primarily from south side of Greeno Road, as Art indicated. But we can't, in my opinion, we can't just start approving everything as B2 there, because it just leaves it open-ended. If there's not some type of restriction or overlay in place, then you will wind up with what a large percentage of the citizens have indicated that they don't wish to see in that area. I would suggest, and I agree with what you're saying, Art, we need to have a plan, not just, I don't think voting no and then having these people blocked out for a year is fair to them. I think we need to have a plan. Unfortunately, I can say I don't have a plan immediately. I've been on a 3-year hiatus from the planning commission, so this is my first.
But we still love you and welcome back.
I appreciate that.
All the fun.
Yep. You know, I would recommend we consider continuing for, you know, further discussion, just so we can see if we can come up with something that will work for everybody on this.
Is that a motion?
I'd love to hear from some of these other members
Okay.
who've been more active
That's
first,
good.
but that is where I would be leaning, yes.
Yeah. Me too.
Okay.
Hey, everybody, it's Holly. I just want to pipe in for a minute. I have been around listening to the overlay, non-overlay. I do know that the value of the property is zero as residential, and we all know that. And we have to accommodate and be flexible and progressive with the change that's coming. Is there a possibility of restructuring our B2 restrictions in a geographical area by doing a drawing overlay map to say the northern side of the corridor, since that the southern part of Greeno was strongly opposed. Maybe we can hear from the citizens on the northern side of Greeno, where we could maybe accommodate and restructure some of these restrictions.
The Northern Greeno Overlay District?
Whatever it takes.
Well, you know, one thought that I have is if we do, as Jimmy suggested, hold this over for a month, then it gives the applicant some time to say, hey, B4 would be fine with us, or they could voluntarily say, hey, we'll put a, 20-foot setback deed restriction or something like that, as long as we're not, wading into contract zoning and don't quite cross that line and get up close to it, but don't cross it. If we hold it over 30 days, I think we could accomplish something like that, and they be happy and we be happy as well.
And I'll be happy to meet with the applicants.
I'll give you one more alternative. Is perhaps now that this has come up, realistically, there's almost enough property right there that if they got those, I'm looking at 4 landowners, if they got 4 landowners together, there might be enough property there to be able to do a PUD. So, I mean, for 30 days, at least it gives the landowner have a couple of choices. They could try to coordinate with the other 3 owners. They could come back to us and say B4, or at least they've got some alternatives as opposed to us just denying them.
Here's another idea of what we could do that might be the simplest of all. Just say if you're on Greeno Road or you're on Highway 181, any thoroughfare, we allow a commercial PUD with as little as a quarter acre or any size lot. And then every one of these could come in as a PUD, and we could simply say, we want some setback and we don't want to see a big drive-through. We don't want all asphalt and that would be the simplest thing of all. And then it's not, any kind of contract zoning or spot zoning or what have you. It just come in as a PUD. And that would be a very simple solution. Just say anything on Greeno Road, any size, just simply take our current PUD amendment that says a 3-acre minimum and say on Greeno Road, there's no minimum acreage for a PUD. And if the city council would pass that, these things would be quite easy to deal with.
Well, and you certainly would be affording those people that have had the thumbs of the city put on them for years and years and years and years. It'd give them an opportunity.
And it's just because every PUD we've
That's
done
a good.
on
That's a great
every
idea.
PUD we've done on Greeno Road, I've liked.
Yeah.
And most of this rezonings we've done on Greeno Road, frankly, about 50-50, I've liked 50-50, have gone kind of south. But every PUD we've done at the end of the day, I think looks pretty good.
I think it does too. That's a good idea.
Yes.
I'm sure Hunter's excited, huh?
Wait, just 1 second, Rebecca. All right, well, we can hear you now.
Okay. I'm not not opposed to what you're discussing. I feel like there were a lot of other ideas that were baked into the overlay district. And, you know, instead of just defaulting to everybody doing a PUD, it would be nice if there was some guidance to clarify what we're looking for in a PUD. And what would be ideal. And that's almost going back to what was trying to be expressed in the overlay district. But to give some guidance so people aren't just sort of spending a lot of energy creating a PUD and maybe they don't hit it on the mark.
I think that's a good point, Rebecca. I think that that's where staff comes in. That's, you know, we have, you know, leadership and communication with the staff so that they know, you know, what the P&Z and what the city council are ultimately looking for is that, you know, the shielding and the, you know, the facescape, et cetera.
And Mr. Chairman, I do want to acknowledge that is a great idea and a good option. In a case like this, where someone's just wanting to sell it and there's no development plan, it hurts. So another option is creating another district that we can just say, if you want to zone here, and then we set up what the guidelines are. For that matter, there's already 3 districts in our zoning code that we don't have any. I think they've been in place for 13 years, and there's not one project zoned within the city for that. That has maybe some different comfort levels. So,
Are you talking about taking an overlay district and breaking it up, or are you talking about something different?
no, we actually have 3 districts: village center, neighborhood center, and those have you know, it's kind of, there's a lot of critiques on form-based codes. There's been form-based codes in our zoning code since 2006. No one has ever applied for that. But that is an option, and I'll have to look at the uses. We can certainly look at the uses, but if we wanted to consider something for the 181 in Greeno that would give an option, that could be another, not an overlay district, but just a district. Then that gives the option, at least there's an option out there for someone that without a current plan, that just wants to sell it, in like this case, that we can rezone to with a comfort level. Because I agree, when there's a developer that is ready to have a plan, PUD is the perfect opportunity. But when it's just, we want to get it out of our name.
But they could still come up with, you know, most PUDs change. They could still come up with something just showing a little green space and kind of an entrance, and
Sure.
And we know it's subject to change at some point. I mean,
Well, the applicant certainly would need to understand that we can postpone this thing for a month, as y'all said.
Yes,
But
and a lot of
but
those-
they can postpone it themselves afterward for as long as they want to postpone it. To me, as long as we're working toward a solution to the problem. But to just keep pushing them off and pushing them off and pushing them off is about the same thing as just denying them and making them come back in a year. You know, and let me ask you this. You know, all of the flack that we got and all the hours that have been put into the Greeno Road overlay district has come from the south end. What if we broke the Greeno Road overlay district up into 2 pieces and split it at Fairhope Avenue?
Well, and 90% of the flack was from people that weren't even in the city limits.
I understand. That's right. They were down south.
Didn't even apply to them.
Just that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think there's a lot of options that do not help the applicant this month, and I will be
No, they
willing
don't.
to help the commission any way we
Okay.
can.
Well, does somebody want to make a motion at this point?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we postpone or continue to review this application is it 30 days, Ken, or is it to the next meeting?
To the next meeting.
Well, it's not specified.
Okay, that we continue until the next meeting. That's my motion.
I have a motion to continue, and I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Mr. Lee, did you understand kind of the gist of what we were discussing?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay, and one thing, to discuss with staff that might be quicker, if it looks like just a regular office for like an attorney or an insurance agent or an accountant or something, B4 might be something that could go through quite quickly. B2 is your typical retail zoning, and B4 is your typical office zoning. That's just in a quick, broad brush, with a couple hundred exceptions. But just talk with Hunter, and he can give you some guidance.
Yes, sir, we will do that. We were not aware of B4.
Right.
We were guided toward B2 for whatever reason. So yes, we'd like to explore that.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Lee.
Thank
All right.
you.
All right, next item on the agenda is ZC 20.07, and that's you again, Hunter.
Thank you. Joe, I'll let you help me get this set up where people on the internet can see. While that's getting set up, a little preamble to this one. Approximately a year ago, we had an application for a subdivision at this same subject property. We tabled that in staff. It never made it to within the applicant and staff. It was never brought to the commission. Had some problems of meeting all of the requirements and waivers here and there. So you will see this that we're about to talk about is another PUD request. And then the next item on the agenda is a follow-up preliminary plat. That's a little uncommon. We typically don't put those on at the same time, but when we have that application sitting idle, the applicant can choose. The first portion is the PUD. I know the commission knows this, but I'll say that for the public and the citizens in the audience. PUD is much more general. It's looking at zoning, and we can discuss technical merits of drainage and things like that on the next agenda item. So I'm going to give a broad overview of this. We can discuss it, but if warranted, we can get into more technical discussions at the next agenda item. So case CZ 20.077, Hermitage Court. It's a rezoning request from R1 to PUD. The property is located approximately midway between Gayfer Road and Fairhope Avenue. It's 4.4 acres that is currently zoned R1 single family and unzoned, or I'm sorry, unbuilt wooded area. The overall summary that provided by the applicant, single-family residential community located on the west side of Blue Island Avenue, Blue Island Street, and Eastern Fairwood subdivision. It will consist of 8 lots on 4.4 acres with a density of 1 units per acre, accessed by a proposed street that will be dedicated to the city of Fairhope. So as we can see here, this is the lot being proposed. I'm going to divert just a second. This is the first PUD we've seen since the city adopted a master development plan. So like we talked about a little before the meeting, you got a lot of information in your packets this month. When Emily's in charge, it'll be better. But that does include everything within a PUD. And in addition to a site plan, you can see things like covenants or building plans. That document tells everything about this development and holds those applicants to what they're proposing. So in general, the reason for recommendation here is 15,000 square foot is the minimum square feet of an R1 size property. By handling detention, common area, right-of-ways, the smallest lot here is 14,474 square feet. So just under that 15,000. The average of the lots are well over 15,000 square feet. I think the largest lot is 19,000. What is being proposed and why it's a change is based on 2 items. Minimum lot size of 14,000. That 14,000 was actually my recommendation because the 14,474 is very accurate. If they have to make some amendments, there's no wiggle room, and I have to go do a lot of paperwork, and we have to apply a lot of bureaucracy. judging this 14,000 square feet, there's no additional lots going to be created. It doesn't affect the intent of the property. It just gives us a little wiggle room as if need be. And then the other additional change is the front setback shall be 35 feet instead of 40. The houses, we typically on regular zoning do not require houses, what the houses look like, sizes, never cost, but the applicant within their master development plan has submitted some plans, minimum square foot of 2,400 square feet with a 2-car garage. Just a few of the sample house plans are shown on the slides. The landscape area is meeting tree ordinance, detention area. I will touch just real quick on detention and drainage in this area. This site receives an incredible amount of water, and it exits onto the neighboring property. The fixing the problems of the upstream is not the challenge proposed to the developer here. Making sure that the post-development flows are less than, we hope, than the pre-development flows is our concern. And there has been a lot of scrutiny in the last year of the plan, and we've had our Public Works Director, Richard Johnson, look at this in great detail and work with the engineers. And there's a comfort level here that this works and does not increase any problems here and actually helps the downstream. If we need to look at more plans, that'll be available in the next. There is one minor error on here in the site data table in the site plan. We made an amendment of max coverage should include all buildings, and that's included in the master development plan as well as a couple of other documents. There's just one place that it says only principal structure because this was originally received a year ago. So we've got a recommendation there to change that. And our recommendation is to remove that one note. Our recommendation is to approve with the following conditions. Remove, quote, principal structure, unquote, from the maximum lot coverage portion of the site data table. And then the declaration of covenants was given to us, but what it wasn't included as an appendix for the master development plan, that will be done so that it is part of the PUD.
Any questions for Hunter? If not, I'll go ahead and ask. I see SC Civil is the engineer. Is David or Larry Smith here at this point?
Yes, it's Larry Smith. I'm on those meeting.
Thank you, Larry. You can go ahead now.
Yeah, Hunter did a great job of explaining a lot of the things we've been dealing with on the last year for this site. To kind of give you a history, when we first submitted this, we submitted it with a 40-foot right-of-way and kind of mimicking some of the other subdivisions in Fairhope, Songgrove, Fox Hollow, Hawthorne, Glen. They all have 40-foot right-of-ways. And so we submitted it with that right-of-way. One of the first comments we had was we needed to have a 50-foot right-of-way. And so we discussed, trying to get a waiver from that and just keep the 40-foot right-of-way since it is common on some other subdivisions in Fairhope. But at the time, staff wasn't going to be able to support that. And so when we came back, we next started looking at keeping it just like we had it on the R1 with a 40-foot right-of-way, but we rezoning to R2, but keeping the lots exactly the same, and then give that 50-foot right-of-way. So nothing really changed, but as y'all all know, when the R2 comes through, it doesn't necessarily have to go with what we showed it because the zoning goes with the land, and so Hunter said that it would be better for us to come in as a PUD, and so we discussed it with the client. They were fine with coming in as a PUD versus the R2 zoning, and that way the city knows what they're getting. And as I said earlier, this is the same exact lot width that we originally started a year ago. Nothing has really changed other than now the imaginary line, the right-of-way line, is moved 5 feet in either direction to give you that 50-foot public right-of-way. And the only other real change that you see in the PUD is reflective of that 5-foot change was the setback. It went from 40 to 35, and that was because with increasing that right-of-way 5 feet, we had to, we're trying to keep the building line where it would have been with a 40-foot right-of-way, just so we had an adequate building area. So that's really the only change. As I said, it's just that imaginary right-of-way line. Most neighborhoods, everybody thinks they own up to the curb anyway. The curb line hasn't changed, but just want to give you that history of how we went from R1 by right to this PUD.
All right, thank you very much, Larry. Any questions for Larry at this point? If not, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing now. Does anybody?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I would like to note that there are several letters in your packet from adjacent property owners.
We've got about a half dozen or so letters in our packet that you've probably had a chance to read. Would anybody wish to speak to this item? This is the PUD rezoning off of Blue Island, and again, in this case, the Planning and Zoning Commission simply makes a recommendation to the City Council because a PUD is in fact an ordinance. And the nice thing about the PUD is you know exactly what they're doing because it becomes an ordinance versus a rezoning to R2 where they can change it around to do anything that the R2 allows. But does anybody from the public wish to speak to this item at this time? Yes, ma'am. If you'll state your name and your address for Emily, please.
Yes, my name is Renee Taylor, and my address is 253 Blue Island Avenue. And I would like to say that the information in your packet we just received 2 days ago is the first we've seen this detailed in this information. And as you can see, it's a lot of material to read and look through. So I'd like to please request an opportunity to respond to this misinformation that is in the package. And as a resident, I'd like to be able to make additional comments past what we made a couple of weeks ago. But we've just now read this information. And there is misinformation, and I do have several examples, if you'd like.
Okay.
Do I have time to mention a couple?
Yeah, go ahead. We generally give people 5 minutes.
Would
Okay.
you pull the microphone down a little bit, please?
Yes, okay, yes. Is that better? Okay. So on page 46, there's a comment in the package that says that we, the neighbors, want to keep the property undeveloped. And that's inaccurate. We'd like to see it kept to an R1. Certainly, it could be developed and should be developed. On page 47, it says there will be no impacts on the neighbors. And in numerous ways, there will be impacts. And I'd like an opportunity to be able to express that to the commission. And then on, well, I don't have the page number, but comparing Fairwood subdivision as a surrounding neighborhood is misleading. We have no access to Fairwood subdivision. We don't see the neighborhood. It's a stretch to have used that as a surrounding neighborhood. And there are 4 cul-de-sacs off of Blue Island, and so a cul-de-sac would be appropriate, but unfortunately for this landowner, the cul-de-sac, there's not enough land to create a cul-de-sac comparable to the others on our street. So what's being proposed is totally inappropriate for our neighborhood, and I would love for the Planning Commission members and staff and anyone to come see what this nice development, how it will impact our neighborhood in a number of ways. And so I just don't want to keep repeating myself. So I just appreciate that opportunity before a decision's made. Thank you.
Thank you, yes, ma'am. And again, we're just going to make a recommendation, not a decision. The decision will ultimately be made by the city council.
And that's being new to this and never having been to a planning commission meeting before, and being involved in a neighborhood item like this. And Hunter was very nice to quickly before the meeting to help us understand more of the process from here, because I'm clueless. Thank you.
Would anybody else wish to speak to this item, either here in person or via our computer? I guess I better turn my microphone on. Nobody else out from the computer land or in person wishes to speak to this item? In that case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time and turn this item over to the commissioners. I've got some questions for you, Larry. This land is pretty low. You're pretty certain with your engineering calculations on it. You know, my granddad developed Blue Island, and that was a piece of property that he actually left out due to how low it was before water retention and drainage. It was just sort of where the water went. But you're pretty comfortable with all the drainage calculations and everything going on through that area?
Yes, we've done a study of not just that piece of property, but everything upstream of the property. We've looked at some of the issues that were brought up during the community meeting that we had. There's a lot of concern with water that was coming from adjacent streets and then flowing down Blue Island, and then what ultimately comes across and comes through the property. We're picking all of that up and directing it towards the low part of our the subject property. We're also installing an additional inlet upstream of the low point of Blue Island to help capture some of that runoff so it doesn't all collect in the sag, because that was one of the complaints that we had heard, is that it's backing up because it can't get into the storm system quick enough down in the sag, the low point of Blue Island. We also looked at some other options early on with doing more of a regional pond. We spoke with the city. We actually met with the city council about it. We met with Richard Johnson, and this just wasn't a critical area that the city wanted to look at doing a regional pond. Nothing to do with our subdivision, but just as we were kind of looking at this whole area, that it was determined there was more critical areas at the time. So yeah, we've looked at not just this subdivision, but the whole drainage area right through there.
This eventually goes down to Fairwood Gully, doesn't it? Down by Fairwood
Yes.
and Ashley eventually. Okay. All right, commissioners, any questions, concerns? No questions or concerns, I'll entertain a motion.
Lee, can you hear me? It's Holly.
Yes, Holly, go ahead.
So I look at, how comparable this is to Greenbrier. Greenbrier's got a lot more lots on it, a lot more roof dimensions, been around a longer, time for sure, but this is less impact for sure than what Greenbrier is putting off. So that's what I compare it to when I see something that's comparable to about the same size. It's, there's maybe two lots on the end that would add more depth on the south side of the development. But as far as change, that's where I see it adapting to what else is on the street. That property has been for sale for almost over 5 years. It is wet and low, but I also don't like to just see it sit there either.
Mr. Chairman, can I address a couple of questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Stand up here and get an echo if I talk
on that mic. Just to answer a couple of questions that were brought up. The analysis done on R2, that was adjacent. That was one of the reasons we denied or recommended we're not going to approve the R2 because now, as y'all know, we can get into long conversations about density and analysis and all of those things, and you kind of look at a broad range. But in effect, everyone is entering this proposed subdivision from Blue Island. There is, without a connection to the west, it is in effect R1 and should remain that character for the community. So that's what we pushed from day one. There was
Hunter?
and what we're. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Well, that's kind of my question, is that Blue Island has lots of large lots and it has an R1 character. Why would we have any compulsion to do anything less or more dense than R1? What is the creative use of the PUD here? What advantage is there? Why should we let somebody diverge from R1?
So what we're looking at here, there's a range of lots from 14,474 to over 19,000. In effect, we have an average lot size greater than R1 size lots. Greenbrier to the south is all 15,000 square foot. So it is a little creative to have some slightly undersized lots, but it's for creating a green space that Greenbrier didn't have. It's helping a drainage area and getting in. And the other point I want to make, just touch on, even our subdivision regulations discourage cul-de-sacs. So that just that point.
Yeah, they don't encourage hammerheads. They discourage cul-de-sacs in favor of connectivity, not in favor of hammerheads.
Well, and that was the review was kind of a block from the existing Fairwood to the west, the connectivity there. There was actually an option looking at the property to the north, and as Larry talked about, a regional detention and making connection through there. It's just not viable because that property is even lower and has some other drainage concerns. So what do we do when there's no connection available?
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't want to, if we're talking about discouraging cul-de-sacs, I just wanted to be clear that this was not the option that we're encouraging. This is effectively like a cul-de-sac, it's just harder to turn around.
It is. It's not that we try to discourage cul-de-sacs, it's we try to encourage connectivity so that people have two different directions out to, spread traffic out into different directions, which this being pretty much, to the north, Ashley is, 100% connected, so there's not that possibility.
Hunter, am I reading correctly that all these lots are going to be 100 feet wide? And so some of them looks like they're maybe 146 deep, if I'm reading the dimensions correctly.
Yes.
And so if they were 100 by 150, they would meet R1 zoning as they are?
Yes, that's correct. There are two things different from R1 zoning.
Okay.
And that's the lot size, but it's site plan driven, so they can't go out and build anything else. It's exactly the way these lots are drawn out. and then it's front setbacks, 35 feet from 40 feet. And that doesn't affect anyone other than the folks within this subdivision. Mr. Chairman, there's a comment from the public. I know we've closed the public hearing. Would you like to entertain that question?
If you want to go ahead and entertain the question, since we're doing these online and we're not having the participation, I'd rather err on the open side.
Okay, come on up and ask that question.
I'm George Dittman at 249 Blue Island. Just noticed the conversation, we're comparing this subdivision proposal with Greenbrier, and we haven't talked about the immediate right next to this Hermitage subdivision, the immediate homeowners. We've got homeowners right across the street, 3 of them with 1 acre lots, different than Greenbrier. And we're talking, you're putting in a new subdivision right next to that, changing the whole area. You got 2 houses away. Bruce Jones has 2.5 acres. Bobby's got 1 acre. Mr. Taylor has a lot, just 2 houses from this site, 100 feet by 300. Bruce Jones just up has 2.5 acres. Richard and Kitty have a long, deep lot, 100 by 300. This is the surrounding right next to the subdivision, not Greenbrier. Greenbrier was way past there. And so most of us are thinking maybe 3 lots would be nice. I know I've talked to the Hermitage brothers, and they would like just one person to own the thing would be ideal. But that's not what we're talking about. But anyway, when we talk about the character of and charm of the area, we moved here 4 years ago, mainly because of that. We were thinking of Ocean Springs. We were thinking Bay St. Louis, that kind of area. But we decided Fairhope. And it's because of the charm of the neighborhood and what we're living in. Diane has over 1 acre right across. So anyway, this proposal just doesn't seem to fit in. And one of the other things that kind of rubs me is we're seeing all this new information right now, and I really appreciate Larry inviting us a year ago and presenting all this stuff. But why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it now, Larry? This is the first time we're seeing everything, and we feel a little bit kind of bamboozled with it. Here we go, and Renee was just talking about that. It's like, what? So anyway, those are some of my concerns.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Hunter?
Can I respond?
Sure, you take it, Larry.
I want to reiterate. I mean, I've had several conversations with George. I had one yesterday. I think it was yesterday for 30 minutes. So I'm always open for people calling me, and I answer the questions as best I can. But the plan that was presented a year ago has not changed, other than a right-of-way line that shifted 5 feet on each side of the road. That's the only thing that has changed from what was presented a year ago. The drainage is still in place. We're still improving the drainage in the area. The common areas are still the same. The lot widths are still the same. Nothing has changed other than the right-of-way line, the imaginary line that's in the ground that shows where the city's responsibility is and where the homeowner's responsibility is, to shift it 5 feet in either direction to give you a 50-foot right-of-way. And the only other thing that they have is that now they have a lot more documentation of what has to be done there. What was presented a year ago, they could have put a 1,000-square-foot house on that lot. Now they know they're going to get a 2,400-square-foot house. There's been nothing added to this plan that's gone in a negative direction, other than if you want to call it a negative direction, we shifted a right-of-way. We gave the city 5 more feet to own and maintain.
I understand.
I mean, we can go with a 40-foot right-of-way and keep it R1 zoning like we originally proposed, but the staff didn't want to get behind that. So, and
I agree, Larry. To follow up with that.
I agree, Larry. On the other hand, I can understand the public's point of view that those are very large lots through there and on Ingleside. And here we're using a PUD to get, as many lots as possible for a money grab, which if it was my land, I'd probably do the same thing. But I can understand their points, that these lots are, a fourth to a sixth of the size of the lots surrounding them.
Well, to say Greenbrier is far away is also a stretch, though. And, unfortunately, to develop these lots and fix an existing drainage issue, you can't just put 3 lots there and actually afford to fix it.
Well, it depends on how much you pay for the land. If you pay too much for the land, then,
Well,
you
but
can't-
the point, Hunter, isn't the point that the lots on I'm using on the average, but basically are R1 lot sizes?
Yeah,
And all of the property is owned, so it really doesn't matter that the lots across the street are an acre or they're whatever. That doesn't play into it. If it fits the regulations,
Well, this
then
is
it
a
fits the
PUD.
regulations.
Yeah, this is a PUD.
But it's still, the lot sizes are
Now, I'm
15,000.
quoting my buddy Art Dye.
No,
He
you're not gonna
says-
quote me today.
When you bring a PUD in, it needs to be something special, not just try to get more lots on a piece of
Well,
land. Quote Art
but
Dye.
I'll give you one thing on that, to kind of back that up. Certainly, the drainage in terms of having the ability to control some drainage is important. They've got green space out on Blue Island, which I think is important. And, realistically, I guess you could have gone to you almost could have gone to R1A and had about the same number of lots. So, just because the lots are across the street or next to it or an acre plus is far in excess of what R1 allows. So, anyway.
And that was my only point, and it just to give some, while we don't make that analysis, we look at everything that was in yellow on that. That's what we look at. We don't look at, there could be an 80-acre R1 lot. But if we try to tell someone they can't do what they're approved for, we're gonna get sued and we're gonna lose. And
Well,
that's the city.
but it goes back to the same thing. I mean, if it fits the regulations, there's no reason to deny it. If it doesn't fit the regulations, there's no reason to approve it. So,
You wanna make that in the form of a motion?
yeah, I will. About the approving it or denying it?
You, whatever motion you want.
All right, I'd make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to move this along. Case number ZC 20.07, Hermitage Court, PUD. I make a recommendation that I move that we recommend to the city council approval. With the conditions. Thank you very much.
Do I have a motion to approve with the conditions? Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we're going to do a roll call vote in that case. Art and Jimmy, y'all are both ayes since he made the motion in the second. Going through, Harry,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Nay.
Holly,
Aye.
and who have I missed? Oh, I'm sorry, Jason, since you don't have your own circle, excuse me. Jason?
It's okay. Aye.
All right. And then I am an aye as well, so the motion passes with one dissent. Well, the recommendation passes. All right, next item on the agenda is, again, Hermitage Court Re-Subdivision. And this is a subdivision request, so it will not go to city council, but I assume they'd be asking to approve this subject to the rezoning. Mike, are you out there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right, if you want to go ahead and make your presentation.
All right. So I believe my screen should be sharing at this point in time.
Why can I not hear any better than that?
We'll run through this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can
Louder
you
the better.
Mike, can you speak up a little bit?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Can you scream a little bit, Mike?
Possibly. The SD 19.39, Hermitage Court. We'll go through this quickly and stop me if you have any questions. We've touched on most of the highlights already. The
This feels like
previous case.
this feels like deja vu.
Weird, I know it. See if you can follow along. So this is the 8-lot subdivisions located on Blue Island that you just seen. The zoning map in the aerial there showing the R1 parcels around it. The site plan looks eerily familiar to the PUD that you just saw. They are currently zoned R1, requesting to go to a PUD for the 8 lots. As Hunter showed, the site data replicates the exact site data that was in the PUD, as this subdivision will have to be built in substantial conformance with the PUD if approved by the city council. The required setbacks are front 35, rear 35, side 10, and street side 20 feet. The drainage was a big topic as well. In here, all the drainage is collected from Blue Island and an additional inlet that is there and is going to be carried on site, and it's all going to be directed to a common area and a detention pond located on the north side of the property. So it'll have its TSS removal is compliant, and all the water is captured and go into this pond and more controlled, as Larry explained. The green space matches the PUD site plan that is there. The total green space that the subdivision regulations would require is 15%, and they're providing almost 17%, a little over 3/4 of an acre. Staff's recommendation is to approve with the following condition: that approval of zoning case 20.07 by the city council without any substantial changes to the current proposed site plan. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that may have come about since then from anybody.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. Any questions for Mike? All right, in that case, I'll go ahead and, Larry, do you have anything to add at this time, or do you want to just wait in case we have any questions come up?
I'll just wait and see if y'all have any questions for me.
Okay. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. This is the public hearing for the subdivision. This would be subject to the PUD being approved by the city council. Anybody wish to speak to this item?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to state that you also have several letters as part of your packet.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir, you come up, please state your name and your address, please, sir.
I'm Bobby Cook. I'm at 154 Blue Island, which is down south of this neighborhood. Drainage is my major concern, okay? 24-inch cross drain under Blue Island. I've been there 35 years, okay? On 2-3 occasions, I've seen water vertically going over Blue Island because the 24-inch drain pipe would not take the water, okay? With hurricane events, September the 17th, Hurricane Sally, because there's a Grady Pond south of me that fills up the backyards of about 3 or 4 addresses. There's a 12-inch pipe going under Blue Island into the big gully, which takes that water, okay? When that fills up, it starts running across my front yard, Richard Bradshaw's backyard. With Hurricane Danny in 1995, the water ran for 7-8 days. It was on the process of going in houses before it would come down my way, okay? But the water's running from the south to the north. At that time, Gladys Daughtry, Diane's mother, lived there. With Hurricane Sally, water like, what, 1 step getting in your house, Diane?
No, not that far.
Less than a step? But the drainage, I beg to differ with the engineering aspects of it. They've never seen a 24-inch rain come with the conditions of that 24-inch pipe, okay? But the drainage, Diane has been told by the city of Fairhope to get flood insurance. In other words, the city of Fairhope saying, duh, I don't have any solution for that. But I see the catch pond, and I'm not an engineer. I spent 50 years with AT&T. I never had very good impressions of engineers, period. But the drainage is a major, major concern there, okay? Not at a 10-inch, 5-inch, 2-inch afternoon thunderstorm. But you get into these monsoons where we get 19, if you weren't here, Hurricane Danny set over Mobile Bay for, I guess, 6 days, 5 days?
Forever.
It was 38, 39 inches of rainfall during those days. And in that type of event, the 24-inch drain pipe, cross drain under Blue Island, is a joke. It does no good. Diane suffers with it. She's got 2 lots, a vacant lot, I guess, between you and I, and your address is 206. But Diane just happens to be in the low point of Blue Island, on the opposite side of the street from this neighborhood. I'm forever checking the drain pipe, keeping it cleaned out. During the most recent hurricane, I guess, Diane, you and I checked it every other day because of concern of an afternoon thunderstorm. But the drainage is a major, major issue there. As Larry Statistical develops and builds lots behind Diane on those streets he's got over there, every rooftop, every driveway puts her house in more of a threat already, okay? This phenomenon of the Grady Pond down south of me on the, I guess it would be on the east side of Blue Island. The Grady Pond, if those of you, I guess, are you familiar, sir, with the term Grady Pond? Okay. It's just a natural indention that has never been properly drained across Blue Island into the Big Gully. But those are some of the concerns I've got concerning the development. Where I came from, North Hill County, you can put a trailer park in there. I don't really care. I've got a 1-acre lot. Diane's got 2 2-acre lots. But the aesthetics of what goes there is of no concern to me. I've lived there for 35 years. I'll live there until I die. The value of the lot I live on has gone up dramatically, you know, during the 35 years I've been there. But I have no concern at all about a development. I know Bird Moore used to laugh and tell me there was one buildable lot on there and it's in the very back, Bobby, and it would cost so much to cross the wetlands. Because if you move that neighborhood out of where it is now, Corps engineers would say, no, that's wetlands. The water goes from a 24-inch ditch, 24-inch pipe cross drain under the street, 90% of it coming down Diane's between her 2 lots. But if you move that neighborhood into lots of places in Daphne, Corps engineers would call it wetlands, and you couldn't do nothing with it, okay? Because of the drainage problems. But I just wanted to throw that out. There's a letter to that effect that I wrote to Ms. Emily, someone, you, okay. It was a handwritten letter, but I know Diane had written a letter also. But the city of Fairhope has a day of reckoning coming, Councilman, with that drainage issue and the development going on east, the Grady Pond down south, and Diane's lot being the low point of Blue Island on the east side. And I don't know, the retention pond, I guess they would extend the 24-inch drain down there. But I could see that being an impairment to drainage during afternoon thunderstorms, let alone the monsoons that we'll continue to have. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to speak to this item? Anybody out there in computer land wish to speak to this item?
I'll respond when everybody else is done, please.
All right, in that case, I'll go ahead at this time and close the public hearing. And Larry, that was kind of what my question was. I'm scared about those houses you're building being underwater if we have one of those 30-inch rains. Oh, we can't hear you,
You
Larry.
muted yourself.
I think you muted yourself, Larry.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Didn't realize I unmuted myself. So basically what we did is, typically Fairhope requires you to do a downstream analysis. We did upstream and downstream because, obviously we need to know what's flowing through our site. And there is a 24-inch pipe that goes underneath the sag of Blue Island. And we analyzed that and came up with what he is saying, that that pipe is undersized. So what we did is we went uphill of that sag and installed another inlet, and that inlet's connected to a 36-inch pipe. That 36-inch pipe then heads to the low area and discharges off the property. It has a stilling basin and a level spreader that puts it back into the low area north of our site. He also mentioned a concern about taking all that water and putting it into our pond. We are not taking Blue Island's water and putting it into the detention pond or the retention pond for the subdivision. It's bypassing that. Only stormwater from this subdivision will go into that pond. So we don't have the backup issue from the pond backing up into the storm system. So yes, we have looked at the drainage and we've done what we can on our side of the right of way to try to alleviate any of the existing issues on Blue Island. We've installed another inlet, we've installed larger pipes within this drainage system. And by the time the Blue Island storm system is done, it gets up to a 48-inch pipe. That's nothing to do with our subdivision. That is infrastructure that we're utilizing to carry off-site stormwater.
Thank you, Larry. Commissioners, any more questions for Larry or for staff at this time? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I did the other one, so I'll do this one too. Case number SD 19.39, Hermitage Court Re-Subdivision. I move that we approve it, subject to staff recommendations and the city council approving the rezoning.
I've got a motion to approve, subject to staff recommendations and city council approving the zoning. Do I have a second?
Second.
I've got a second from Jimmy Conyers. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Nay.
That's Rebecca.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we'll go through a roll call. I know Art and Jimmy, since they made the motions. So Holly?
Aye.
All right. Rebecca?
Nay.
John?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And last but not least, Jason.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes with one dissenting. All right. Next on the agenda is a subdivision request, SD 20.34, Planners Point Shopping Center 15-unit multi-occupancy project out on Highway 104 and 181.
All right, this is Mike. This is my case as well. Make sure I got the right screen sharing for you.
What happened to him? Hello, Mike.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Come on with us.
Can you see the screen?
Yes.
We see.
Okay.
We're getting dizzy.
Sorry about that. This is Planners Point Shopping Center. The owner and applicant is BYC LLC. We have Jake Gibbs with us tonight from Thompson Engineering, his engineer of record for the project. The application is for a 15-unit multiple occupancy project, or an MOP, and it's located on the northwest corner of State Highway 181 and State Highway 104. The property is unzoned in Baldwin County, but lies within the planning jurisdiction of Fairhope and is being reviewed under the multiple occupancy project and Fairhope subdivision regulations. The 15 units comprise of one proposed grocery store with availability of 14 units a 14-unit connected retail center. This application is for preliminary approval, and if approved, an application for a final MOP approval must be submitted to close out the project to record any necessary documents. On the screen, you can see the zoning map on your left, showing just on the corner of North Highway 104 and 181. On the right is the aerial. It's currently a farm field. The site plan on the screen shows where the buildings and the parking are going to be located, along with the entrances on Highway 104 and Highway 181 as well. I want to point out, just for geographical reference, the screen is not north. North is to your right. If you take note of the north arrow on top of the screen. So you'll see there's a grocery store on the west side of the property with the retail units connected to it extending to the north and the parking lot out front. Retention is handled, looking at the page, the top right hand of the screen is the detention pond. These are some elevations of what the proposed buildings are to look like. I want to point out that the maximum height shall be no greater than 35 feet. I believe there's still a dimension calling out 36 feet at the highest point of the grocery store. Per the subdivision regulations for an MOP, the maximum height is 35 feet. The green space for an MOP requires 10%. The overall site is 21.24 acres, requiring 2.12 acres. The total green space provided is 2.32. On the screen, you can see in red, there is a waiver request to count some of the green space percentage and a highway construction setback. We'll get to that in more detail on the next slide. I want to point out the green space areas to make sure they are clear. Starting at the top of the screen, you have a little over 1 acre that is in front of Highway 104 that extends behind the store and around where the detention pond area is. The detention pond itself is not being calculated as any green space at all. The second area of green space is approximately 0.34 acres located in front of the parking area next to the drive entrance to the proposed grocery store. And finally, the third area of green space is going to be on the bottom of your screen on the north point of the property. And that part is where part of it is in a highway construction setback. While we're on this page, it's a little clearer to see, I want to point out that sidewalks are being proposed. They are not being proposed necessarily along the right-of-ways of 104 and 181. They extend from the 104 corner of the property to the first drive, and they become more internal, but still around the perimeter of the developed portion of the property. It goes and connects back to the intersection of 104 and 181 and circles back up to around the drive and roundabouts and back to the other exit on 181. And note that any future development on this property would require additional sidewalks as well. Back to the green space waiver, this is just a blow up of that northern green space area, showing where the construction setback is. In the complete package, you had the green space waiver request from the applicant with Thompson Engineering, Jake Gibbs. The area is a little over 11,000 square feet that is in the highway construction setback. As noted on the waiver request, the right-of-way for 181 for the extension that is coming down to expand 181 to 4-lane has already been acquired and was taken into consideration when this piece of property was actually subdivided into 2 pieces, and their proposed setbacks are a little more stringent than what the highway construction setback currently is. Staff's recommendation is to approve with the following conditions: is that approval of the green space waiver request, and 2, is that future subdivisions or developments shall comply with the notes on the recorded plat slide number 2725E, which states that they have to provide a water flow model data to the standards of the City of Fairhope Water Department and provide sidewalks on all streets within the planning jurisdiction of the City of Fairhope. And I'll be happy to answer questions on behalf of staff. And as I mentioned, Jake Gibbs is with us tonight from Thompson Engineering.
I've got a question.
All right, go ahead, Art.
Question, Mike. What's the hardship for that setback waiver?
Sir?
Do you hear me?
Can you say that one more time?
What is the hardship for the setback waiver?
The hardship that they are proposing is that the highway construction setback isn't the road is not going to expand any further than what has already been acquired by ALDOT.
You don't know that going into the future. It's like putting a retention pond in a highway setback. If the highway is expanded, you lose your retention pond, and it's the same principle. And if there's not a hardship, and the rules and the regulations stipulate what is required, and there's not a hardship, I don't see any way we can grant a hardship.
Well, Art,
I mean a waiver.
I want to bring up something else. All that white space right there is undeveloped at this time. They are subject to additional green space requirements on any of those, which...
Well, I understand, Hunter, but this site is standalone. There's 40 acres actually on that at that intersection. The thought that I mean, there's not a hardship. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's you know, you're not going to do for one, you ain't going to do for them all. You know, set a precedent you're not willing to set. You carry on forever. This is a standalone. If the whole thing was being developed right now, then that'd be another issue. I just don't, man, I mean, the worst thing we can ever have happen, I know we've talked about this a million times, is that we do something that when the next one comes in and wants the same thing done, it just gets compounded and compounded. We don't have a leg to stand on. So the issue, I mean, not last month, month before, we had a number of different waivers that were requested. And the question was, were they hardships? Some of them were and some of them weren't.
And this has come up before, and it was on a section of, I can't remember where it was at, but it was on a section that they have not acquired the property.
My point is, there's plenty of space here for additional green space. Come on, really? No. But go ahead. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I'm not sorry. But go ahead anyway.
All right, we'll go ahead. Any more questions for Mike at this time? If not, we'll go ahead and hear from the engineer or from the applicant at this time.
Thank you, Mike. This is Jake Gibbs. I also have Frank Leatherwood with Thompson Engineering with us. Something happened. I can't see the screen. It can't display content. I must have lost connection for a minute or something. But at any rate, this has been in the planning for some time. As far as the comment about the 36-foot height, we have complied with that. The drawings that we resubmitted, we have complied with the 35-foot height. They may not reflect that. If they did, I submitted incorrectly. But yes, sir, we are complying with the 35-foot maximum height on the building.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does anybody from the public wish to speak to this or have any questions? In that case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn the meeting back over to the engineers. To the commissioners, excuse me. Commissioners,
If I may, one more comment.
Yes,
This
sir.
is Mike.
Who is it, Mike?
Jake had pointed out, that this had been an application that planning and zoning has had for a while. The initial application also was accompanied by a subdivision request that was later withdrawn. So we've been looking at this as a subdivision at one point, as well as an MOP, and then later the subdivision was withdrawn, and some new drawings were submitted for the MOP separate by itself, not showing any subdivision at this time.
Thank you, Mike. Commissioners? I've got a question. Is the parking here, is that a minimum or more than a minimum of what's required?
It's unzoned Baldwin County, and for a multiple occupancy project, there are no parking requirements for the subdivision.
Because I guess getting at what Art was questioning, you know, is that much parking needed at that point? Could some of that be taken out for green space? I don't think I've ever seen a grocery store, even at Christmas, where all the parking spaces were parked in.
Well, they can figure that one
There's
out.
areas the white parts that are shown on the screen that are still inside of the property and inside between 181 in the development and 104 in the development is still going to be that grass filled area that is open for future development at any point in time. So removing parking, adding parking at this point would just alter what could possibly be developed in the future. Any future subdivision require additional green space, as well as mentioned. But to Art's point, you know, what's the hardship of it? It's more of, is that highway construction setback going to be used in the future? We don't know. It's there for a reason. And I'll let Jake speak on the green space if he would like to.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as far as using that portion of the highway construction setback as green space, it's kind of hard to hit a moving target. Yeah, I understand why the state law was set up. It was to keep infrastructure and critical items that the state or the county would have to procure and acquire in the expansion of highways. Yeah, I'm not going to say that Highway 181 won't go to 8 lanes in 20 years. I don't know that. But at this point in time, I would assume that there would be other infrastructure built, and that this right-of-way that is acquired would be the width that it's going to be for the foreseeable future, a good long while. So that's why we were wanting to use that as a portion of the green space, and not only have it as green space, but to have plantings within that green space, as opposed to having just a manicured piece of grass out there. So we have landscaping within that to enhance the view as you come down 181.
All right. Thank you.
It's still, just so you know, and my attitude about it, I don't know what everybody else's is, it doesn't fit the regulations of the City of Fairhope's ordinance. So it's not a hardship. And I hear what you're saying, and I understand it, but it is what it is. The thing about it is, if we don't like the rules and we don't like the regulations, we change them. But you just don't turn your head against one of them, because then everybody else will want something else done too. Okay.
Commissioners, any further questions, concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion, Mr. Chairman. Case number SD 20.34, Planters Point Shopping Center. I move that we approve subject staff recommendations for the MOP and do not approve the waiver for utilizing highway setback as part of green space. So they'll have to figure that one out.
So I've got a motion to approve, subject to staff recommendation number 2, but not staff recommendation number 1. In other words, there's no approval, just so we're clear, Emily, there's no approval in Art's motion for the green space waiver request.
Yes, sir, I understand.
Okay. Everybody understand that, commissioners? So Art is basically making a motion to approve, subject to staff recommendation number 2, but not subject to the green space waiver request. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that John?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, it's me, John.
Thank you, John. All right, I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is Mike.
Yes, sir.
If the green space waiver is not requested, then the subject property at the time does not meet the requirements of green space. That green space would have to be added somewhere else.
That's right.
Correct.
That's the spirit and the intent of your motion.
Yeah, that's
That
correct,
is the
Mike.
intent of my motion. Y'all figure it out. That's up to staff to figure
Might
that
have to
out.
lose a few parking spaces or move a, road here a bit or there a bit, but they can figure that one out pretty easy.
Just wanted to make sure that was a revised plan was to include revised green space.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Mike, this is Jay, but it's approved with conditions, is that what I understand? One of the conditions being find some more green space somewhere else.
That's correct, yes, sir.
All right, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, subdivision 20.42, Fairhope Motor Court Resort Phase 2.
Good evening, everyone. This is Carla Davis, and I'm here to present, I'm trying to share my screen. This is case SD 20.42, Fairhope Motor Coach Resort Phase 2, 12-unit multiple occupancy project. A summary of the request. This is a public hearing to consider the request of Grand Properties, LLC, for preliminary plat approval of Fairhope Motor Coach Resort Phase 2, a 12-unit multiple occupancy project. The subject property is unzoned and approximately 3.88 acres. The property is located on the north side of State Highway 104, approximately 0.3 miles east of Higbee Road. The previous Phase 1 was approved in 2016 and consisted of 45 units. Once Phase 2 is completed, the overall development will consist of 57 total units. To the left, we have the zoning map, and to the right, we have an area map of the subject site, highlighted and bolded in blue. Comment. The applicant provided a site plan illustrating Phase 2 of the Fairhope Motor Coach Resort, which will have 12 condominium units that consist of a motor coach space with a parking pad and a cottage. A traffic study was conducted and approved in 2016 during the submission of Phase 1, which also included both Phase 1 and Phase 2. The site is serviced by Baldwin County Sewer, Riviera Utilities for electric, Fairhope Utilities for gas and water, and they have AT&T. The site is outside of the City of Fairhope's fire jurisdiction, and there are no other fire and rescue services identified or listed. Based on the number of units and acreage, both Phase 1 and Phase 2 meet the green space requirements, or the subregs. Here we have a site plan depicting the subject site in Phase 2, but you can also see a portion of the previously approved Phase 1 in the drawing as well. Here we have a site plan of an enlarged image of the site depicting Phase 2 more in detail. Waiver request standard. Article 6, Section D require the provision of sidewalks along all streets in the planning jurisdiction of Fairhope. The applicant provided a letter stating the following regarding the request for a sidewalk. The project is an extension of the previously approved and constructed Phase 1, and Phase 1 was approved without having any sidewalks. Furthermore, Phase 2 does not front on a public road that has any sidewalks and is the more rural part of the community. While Phase 1 did not require a sidewalk to be constructed, there does not appear to be any sidewalks within the immediate vicinity. Therefore, staff understands the applicant's request for a sidewalk waiver. All criteria for waiver and approval standards have been met.
Hey, Carla, are they going to provide an easement in this case?
They did not depict an easement, but that's something that we can have if the waiver is not approved. Recommendation.
Listen, Carla, we need to, in the future, whenever we're gonna give a waiver, we need to make sure that we automatically include the easement in there in lieu of the waiver. That just needs to be standard operating procedure, so we don't have to ask every time.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
that's
I'm
a
gonna
good
start
point.
voting these things down. And do they have sidewalks inside this project?
Mr. Chairman, there's not, this particular piece of property doesn't front on a publicly,
Phase one did.
Phase 1 did, but Phase 2 does not. It's all interior.
It doesn't come out to 104?
No, sir.
Did phase 1, do we have a?
No, sir.
Phase 1 did not require sidewalk. That was a part of the
I think we ought
application.
to require a sidewalk easement on 104, since the same people own both. We're telling them to build sidewalks inside the project.
Mr. Chairman, can I interject?
Sure.
So, Mr. Chairman, we run into this from time to time on MOPs. Not every piece of property has a recorded plat, and not every MOP requires a recorded plat. So bear that in mind in this case. Now, we're handling MOPs quite a bit differently than was handled 4 years ago. And so what you've seen, and Carla, I apologize, you haven't got to your recommendation yet, but I'll go ahead and bring it up now, is that now on MOPs, we're requiring a final approval. We don't use the word plat in there because not every time there's a plat to be signed, but understand that they are requesting a condominium declaration. So when they come back for their final approval, they're going to ask for a condominium declaration. That can be in the form of a plat that could possibly reflect those sidewalks in an easement on property along the margin of the right-of-way, if that is the desire of the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I just think it's just such low-hanging fruit. It doesn't cost them 10 cents. And it gives us the opportunity to get that now, which if you've ever tried to collect those later, as I have numerous times, it's a real pain in the you-know-what. So we just, anytime somebody asks a sidewalk waiver, we need to see where they're located and where they can give us a, through hook, nook, or cranny, we need to see where they can give us a sidewalk easement. And in this case, since, they own all that property on 104, if we didn't get a sidewalk easement with phase 1, staying on us. But let's go ahead and, pick that up now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Carla.
Welcome. I just touched on the recommendations.
Yes,
Staff
please.
recommends preliminary approval of SD 20.42, conditioned upon the following. Just to note, there are 2 additional conditions of approval that have been added since the commission received their packets. If there's any question or I need to elaborate on the 2 additional ones, which is number 2 and 3, I can. But staff recommends approval, subject to the approval of a sidewalk waiver or thereof an easement depicted. All drawings need to depict a 20-foot minimum building setback line along the entire site. Recording of the replat to be submitted prior to the March 1st, 2021. The final approval will need to satisfy the condominium requirements per Article 2 in the subdivision regulations, and final approval will need to include an easement for the water system.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carla.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I just said thank you.
All right, thanks. Ken, on this staff recommendation, if on item number 1, if we said the approval of a sidewalk waiver subject to having a easement on Highway 104, then if it turned out there was some legal issue that, that 104 is owned in a different phase or a different legal situation that's outside of the control of the applicant, they could just come back to us and we could approve it without that at the next meeting, couldn't we? So that would be just a fair way to try to get that Highway 104, because I could have used the sidewalk on 104 when I went to vote with the 3-hour line on Tuesday. It was proper, the traffic was stacked up past that. Does that make sense to you, Carla?
Yes, sir, I understand. I just believe that because of the fact that phase 1 had already been submitted in 2016 and it wasn't required at that time, that's why staff leaned that way, but I agree.
Okay, and it could be that there's a different ownership and they can't do it, in which case they could just bring it back and we could approve it then.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does anybody from the public wish to speak to this item? In that case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn the meeting over to the commissioners.
So I don't have so much of an issue with the sidewalk waiver because of the fact that they don't have one on the first phase. I'm familiar with the property and where it is, and it seemed like if you came back and did put a sidewalk in on the other part, it would just be a sidewalk to nowhere, it wouldn't connect.
Oh, no, what I'm asking for, Jimmy.
It's just is an
No, you're
easement
correct.
to do it.
What I'm asking for is them to give us, if we assume on the property on 104, it's just to
Okay.
put a sidewalk easement on 104, so in the future, if the city or the state or somebody gets a grant, they've got
Gotcha.
the ability to put a sidewalk on 104.
Okay.
We're not saying that anybody will, but if we, routinely do these, it makes the job so much easier. Otherwise, you gotta go get people's,
Approval after the
permission
fact.
one at
Got
a
it.
time. And if you've got, 30 parcels, it's, and one person tries to hold you up, then you have a sidewalk that, doesn't quite connect. And it doesn't cost them anything to do it. As long as the ownership's the same, and if not, they can just bring it back and pass it next month.
I make a motion for approval, subject to staff recommendations with the added language of obtaining an easement then, sidewalk easement.
I've got a motion with a, subject to staff approval with adding a sidewalk easement for 104, if possible, through the ownership. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I've got a second from John. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, SD 2044, a subdivision request for James Gillespie for Payne's Place, a 4-lot minor subdivision. And that will be Buford.
Good evening, Commissioners. Can everyone see my shared screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Commissioners, bear with me just a moment here. Commissioners, I hope you will find this to be a routine minor subdivision. It does have some irregularities, but it is otherwise a routine minor subdivision for Mr. Gillespie, requesting a 4-lot minor. This is on County Road 34, just west of State Highway 181. Lot size is reflected on your screen, as you can see. This is unzoned Baldwin County. It's neither zoned by the county nor the city. All lot sizes are correct. You see the note at the bottom of the page. We do have a little bit of the property under consideration is a bit irregular shape. That will make sense when I flip to this next slide. So, Commissioners, the property marked in light red, the pinkish color, is not included in this subdivision request, as you see by the call-out balloon. So the 4 lots actually envelop the property marked in red. I've called out its proximity to County Road 34. We do not have any fire hydrant issues on this subdivision. That is in place. We'll have our standard sidewalk discussion here in just a moment. And Commissioners, we can come back to any of these drawings at any time if you need to. This is our standard zoning map. Again, unzoned. The nearest property within the city is Stone Creek to the northeast. You can see the irregular shape of this property a little bit better on this drawing. And then here's the aerial image that also shows the outline. So lot 4 will be up here, and then lots 1, 2, and 3 will be this southern portion right here. There are some easements that will be reflected on this plat to make certain that this property, though not in consideration, is accessible from County Road 34. Commissioners, our standard disclaimer for minor subdivisions that this must be recorded within 60 days, as is typical. We try to voice this into every meeting when we have a minor subdivision, the 60-day recording requirement if it's the pleasure of the Commission to approve. So Commissioners, recommendation is approval. Case number 20.44, we do have one condition, and that is the approval of the sidewalk waiver. And Commissioners, we want to memorialize they have included on the plat a 15-foot wide sidewalk drainage and utility easement on the plat, which is kind of standard procedure. Commissioners, the nearest sidewalks are more than 1 road mile from this site, So therefore, we think it's a reasonable sidewalk request for waiver here. Commissioners, item B should actually be labeled as item 2, if you can note that in your recommendation. Wetland buffer signs are required. There are delineated wetlands on this property. They have been delineated. They have been identified on the plat. That does require 100-foot signs spaced 100 feet apart before we can sign a plat. And so we need the code enforcement officers to verify that before we move on site. We just wanted to memorialize that in this staff recommendation. Again, item B should be item number 2. Commissioners, happy to answer questions on behalf of staff.
Thank you very much, Buford. Any questions for staff? If not, I will open the public hearing at this time. Does anybody from the public wish to speak to this item? If not, I'll close the public hearing and turn the meeting over to the commissioners.
Motion, Mr. Chairman. Case number SD 20.44 Paynes Place. I move that we approve subject staff recommendations.
Second.
I've got a motion, a second. I have a motion and a second to approve subject staff recommendations. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. All right, next item on the agenda, SD 20.45, public hearing to consider the request of Wayne and Sherry Mosley for a plat for Mosley Farms, a 3-lot minor subdivision.
Okay, good afternoon. This is, again, Mosley Estate Farms, a 3-lot minor subdivision. And is the request of Wayne and Sherry Mosley. This property is 10.3 acres. It's located on the north side of Dominion Drive, east of Marianne Beach Road. And the applicant desires to divide into 3 residential lots. Here you have the zoning map and the aerial map. It is just showing that this property is unzoned, Baldwin County. Here we have the site plan showing our 3-lot division. And our comments. This application was originally approved on March 2nd by the Planning Commission. The application has since expired, and the applicant is not proposing any changes from the original request. This property is in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, and it is reviewed under the subdivision regulations. Fairhope subdivision regulations require the provision of sidewalks. The preliminary plat did not illustrate sidewalks, and therefore the applicant is requesting a waiver. They have provided a 5-foot sidewalk easement illustrated along Dominion Drive, and that easement should be revised to reflect 10 feet. Due to recent storm events, the applicant was unable to obtain flow model data and would therefore be a condition of approval. Again, the proposal did not include any building of any infrastructure. They did provide letters of availability, but they were dated 6 months ago when the initial approval was received, and as a condition of this approval, we're requesting updated letters for our filing purposes. Again, they have requested a waiver from sidewalks. Our follow-up activities: if it is the pleasure of the Planning Commission to approve the subject case, the applicant is advised that the final plat must be recorded by the judge of probate within 60 days of final plat approval by the City of Fairhope Planning Commission, or the final plat approval is null and void. Staff recommendations: the staff is recommending to approve application SD 20.45 subject to the following conditions: approval of the sidewalk waiver, provision of 10-foot sidewalk waiver easement along Dominion Drive. Flow model tests should be stamped by a professional engineer. The fire hydrants should be shown on the site plan. Submission of updated utility review letters. Provision of property owner certification form, and the provision of a certificate of insurance prior to the signing of the final plat.
Thank you very much.
And that is all I have.
You know, this can I have the floor?
Yes.
Brings up a good, kind of a good question that I don't think we've ever really discussed. You look at the, you look at this plat, let's say this was a 40-acre piece. You get 3 or 4 lots to get inside of a minor subdivision, and now you've got a big piece that lays in there. What are we doing with when we get whoever owns the big piece to come back and want 3 more lots out of that big piece? That now realistically it has presented itself as just a way to circumvent the subdivision regulations, and I mean, you understand what I'm asking? Mm-hmm. So what's out there? And I've got some history. Obviously, there's a lot of history with the Baldwin County Planning Commission, but we had a standing program where if anybody ever came back like that, because what was happening at one point, at least when I first got on Baldwin County Planning Commission, is they take 40 acres and they sell lots all off around the side, right, around the roads, and they leave this in the back and leave one little access in it. But you had absolutely no control. And then as the subdivision regulations changed, then they got to doing, you know, a lot, and leave a big piece back here. But then somebody would come back with a big lot and say, oh, I want a minor subdivision. And realistically, the same piece of property was a major subdivision.
Art, it's interesting you asked that, because Hunter mentioned to me today that that's something that you and he need to discuss with the new mayor. And you remember I sent you my flag lot, you know,
I like that.
Phase 1 through 30, where you got eventually 78 lots on a, you know, 35-acre parcel doing minor subdivisions. And it was kind of humorous, and I'll forward that to all the planning and zoning.
I thought it was cute.
Tomorrow.
But here's a good, this would be a good example right here.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be a good example, and there's got to be a way. And so, is that what y'all have talked? Y'all already talked about it?
Yeah, and I know some of this has been in our conversations for the last. Buford and Ken have put a lot of language out there in proposal, and I think as moving forward, we need to figure out what that's.
Okay, well, you and I will get. We don't need to take the time tonight. Then, if y'all have already, I'm real happy that y'all have already. Steps ahead of me.
No, it's definitely a very much a macro issue as we look at this micro issue here. But it's definitely something we need to look at, especially if we're going to allow those L lots. That's where it really becomes even more important.
Yeah.
If you don't allow the L lots, it's not that big of a deal, because, you know, that back piece of property eventually becomes worthless, and we used to not allow, you know, the flag lots, but once you allow the flag lots, it makes a heck of a difference.
But the alternative to that is they sell them all off the front and leave a driveway, an easement through to the back, and they accomplish the same thing.
And the way we used to get around it was not allowing the flag lots.
Yeah.
And now that we do allow flag lots, then that absolutely comes into play.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, anybody for the property owner wish to speak to this item? If not, I'll turn this over to the commissioners. Oh wait, no, I got to open a public hearing, excuse me. Thank you, Ken. I'll open the public hearing. Does anybody from the public wish to speak to SD 20.45? This is a 3-lot minor subdivision between Dominion Drive and Marianne Beach Drive. All right, in that case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn the meeting over to the commissioners.
All right, Harry, you got this one.
Well, just kind of a dumb question. Going to your concerns, Art, why can't we put another condition in this approval that that large L-shaped lot cannot be further subdivided in the future?
Harry, you just made our attorney just about jump out of his chair. Just look at that response here from Ken, Harry.
Okay. Well, I said it might be a dumb question, but...
no, it's not. It's a good question. Let's see what Ken said.
So hitting right on the point, if we were to come up with...
I can't hear you.
I can't hear you either.
I think there's...
Mr. Chairman, can you ask Ken to go to the podium?
Can you hear me now? I think there could be an issue with doing that on a standalone, separate, one-time thing, but in addressing Art's concern, we have been discussing this, if we want to go that route, we need to make it apply to all people who fall into this category through a regulation of general application, not to do it on a one-off basis.
Harry, the only thing that I would say about that is that this is actually, they still could have an extra lot and still be a minor subdivision because this is 3 lots and not 4. And I don't know what that, I would be interested to hear what Lee and Ken and Hunter have got to say about it, so. Anyway.
Well, and I understand the legal concerns here, and maybe it is something we need to address on a more macro basis somewhere in the future.
I think it is, especially since the flag lots used to be what prevented that, and I'd like to hear what Art has to say because he had a lot of experience with that on the county. Well, we never really had much since we didn't allow flag lots. That kind of nipped most of those possibilities in the bud. All right. Where are we on this now?
We need a motion. You want to make a motion, Harry?
I move to approve SD 20.45, subject to staff recommendations, conditions.
Right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. I was a little distracted. I was missing my Fairhope Falls, part of my Fairhope Falls packet. Next item on the agenda, with no further ado, is Fairhope Falls. Mike, you're up.
Getting right with you.
Mike went to get a sandwich.
Loading on the screen, just 1 second. Let it pull up in Teams for you. Now it took me back to the beginning. So this is a village subdivision approval. This is SD 20.47 Fairhope Falls. The owner and applicants are Fairhope Falls Owners Association, TH Fairhope Falls 2018, and Leonard and Sharon Smart. Dewberry is the engineer of record on the proposed project. This application is actually amending an existing village subdivision that was approved in 2006, which is partially built out. The subject property is inside Fairhope's planning jurisdiction, but outside of the permitting and the police jurisdiction. On the screen, you can see the aerial and zoning map. As I said, it's unzoned, so there is no zoning around it. This portion that is really being contemplated today of the undeveloped is located along Langford Road and connects to the already developed phases 1 and 2 of Fairhope Falls. The proposed development is for 545 lots compared to the approved village plan of 540 lots. When they originally approached us with this, it was 535 lots that they were proposing. There was an increase of 10 lots due to a redesign by request from the surrounding community to not have lots fronting on Langford Road. Now, don't let the 545 lots scare you. That is encompassing the entire Fairhope village plan. As I said, phase 1 and 2 is already completed, and phase 3 has gotten preliminary plat approval and is currently under construction. The undeveloped portion contains a total of 328 lots. The proposed plan changes, mostly the lot width are 65 wide lots are going to 60 foot. There's an increase of 70 foot wide lots. Some of the 75 foot wide lots are decreasing. 80 foot wide lots are staying about the same. 85 foot wide lots are decreasing, and we're actually introducing 100 foot wide lots. The 100 foot wide lots are located in the preliminary plat of phase 3 that has already went through planning commission. On that same screen is the same breakdown of the lots in the old master plan compared with the newly submitted master plan. This is the approved village plat as it stands today, showing the different phases. Phase 1, as I said, has already been approved, and it did not continue all the way to Langford Road as this site plan is currently showed. This development sat dormant for several years with the roads and the infrastructure built out, and later had houses due to the decline, economic decline in the mid-2000s. This is the village plat that is proposed. On the right side of the screen, you can see phases 4 through 9, which is the undeveloped portion for that total of 328 lots as mentioned. Phase 4 does connect to Langford Road and will connect to the existing right-of-way that is currently Fairhope Falls. The master illustration plan showing the different amenities. I know it's a little small on this screen. You guys had the copy in your packets as well. Some of the amenities that were in the original master plan include some additional kayak launches, some boat and RV storage that were located in phase 1 that were not built. This revised master plan has some additional amenities that will be in the undeveloped portions that are listed on the screen, and they are also listed on the site plan that may be approved by you guys tonight. This is just kind of a blow up of what some of the additional amenities are. There's going to be an additional pool. There's a pool already located in the first phase. This will be a second pool and a second mailbox unit that'll be located. Additional playgrounds, as well as exercise parks and some areas for some passive recreation. And as I said, these are being shown on the proposed site plan as well. So that way these are not amenities that can have nice pretty pictures and then forgotten about. That will be on the document that gets approved. There were two major concerns that staff had with this application. Partly the delay in the approving of phases 1, 2, and 3 for the time frame that the village concept was initially approved and how some of those phases were done. Somehow there was a gap between the right-of-way and the completed phases in the undeveloped portion, and the proposed pool amenity was actually in a common area of phase 1. To fix that, the applicant has proposed to do a replat, moving some common lot lines to allow for the future right-of-way in phase 4 to abut the existing right-of-way, and for the location of amenity H on the site plan, which is the proposed pool, to also be located in phase 4. And the village site plan does reflect this lot line movement. So staff's recommendation is for approval of SD 20.47 with the following conditions. 1, the administrative replat is signed and recorded, and a signed copy submitted to the planning department. Condition 2 is that the next phase of construction is phase 4, connecting the existing development to Langford Road. 3, that no subdivision applications shall be accepted until all the conditions have been satisfied. I'm happy to answer questions on behalf of staff. I know I saw Casey Hill with us for Dewberry and some other team members of hers on the line to answer questions on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you very much, Mike. Any questions for staff at this time? If not, we'll go ahead and Dewberry. Y'all are on right now. Thank you.
Lee, this is John Aviant. I'm with TerraCore Development. We're also prepared to do a presentation, but Mike did such a great job on presenting it, and I don't want to duplicate it because it's already been a long night. But I'm just on standby. If there's any questions or concerns, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you so much, John. I'll go ahead in that case and open the public hearing at this time. And if you stay close, if we have any questions that come up for you, I appreciate your being here. All right, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Does anybody from the public wish to speak to Fairhope Falls, out 104 just before Fish River. Yes, ma'am. If you'll state your name and your address for the record,
Yes,
please.
my name is Megan Dunn, and I am a new neighbor on Langford Road. I'm 21685 Langford Road, and I'm just here to kind of represent the group of us who already live on Langford Road and simply ask the developer and the landowner to please consider an opportunity to maybe bring in some landscaping plans that might complement the west side of Langford Road. Those of us who are large landowners who've moved out there for the estate homes that we are in, and looking for something on the east side with this new development that might complement the existing area, kind of keep the integrity of the homes and the neighborhoods there.
That is a beautiful area y'all have out there. I drove through there.
Yes, sir.
I want to know who cuts the grass.
Mr. Smart does.
On y'all, over on your side?
Yes, sir.
Does it really? That's a pretty good deal.
It is.
All right.
Pretty other. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Anybody else wish to speak to this item at this time? And Mike, this is not, at this time, this isn't going out to Langford yet, is it? This is still another phase away, is it not?
Yes, sir. Currently, and this is just amending the village site plan. The next phase 4 would come back for preliminary plat review, and then be built out that would connect to Langford. And to touch on her comment about the landscaping, I thought I had included it in this presentation. It was in your packets, but the discussion with the residents not wanting houses to front on Langford Road, that also, with them turning the houses, also led some area for a 25-foot landscape buffer that does have some vegetative and some screening that will be along Langford Road in the rear of the lots that are on Langford. So there actually is no road frontage on Langford.
Correct.
Was the reason for not wanting houses, Mike, was the reason for not wanting the houses facing Langford aesthetic, or was it because they didn't want traffic on Langford?
It was aesthetic.
Yeah, safety issue.
It was.
Well, I mean, if they're gonna open
No, it
the
was
next
aesthetic.
road too.
That connection's gonna go through, that's
Right,
important.
that's what I was asking, okay.
Yeah, it's more aesthetic reasons, because once you get that many units, you've got to have more than one way in and out.
Right.
All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time and turn the meeting back over to the commissioners. Commissioners, any questions, concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Where are you, Holly? It's your turn.
Okay, I make a motion that staff recommendations we approve with staff recommendations.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Jimmy second.
Let's give a second to Jimmy.
God, I was sleeping.
All right. No, we're just jealous. We figure y'all probably, everybody online probably has cold beers open, and we're sitting here, as each other's monitors. All right, I've got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, Estates at the Verandas, a village subdivision.
You're up next, Rebecca.
Keep it quiet.
Who's got this one? Buford.
Buford, you're muted.
Buford.
Hey, Buford, I think you're muted right now.
Come in, Buford. Art to Buford. I guess you lose out, Trey. We can't hear
Commissioners,
the
can y'all
last
hear
one.
me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioners, I'm sorry, my screen froze, minimized, so I could hear you, you could not hear me. Commissioners, can y'all see my shared screen?
Yes.
All right, very good. We're kind of at the mercy of technology. So, Commissioners, what we have before you is similar to the prior case. This is a request to amend an existing village subdivision. In this case, the verandas. The area reflected in the request for amendment is going to be named the Estates at the Verandas. Refreshing your memories, commissioners. Unzoned Baldwin County, but adjacent to a number of areas that are within the city of Fairhope and thus zoned, as you can tell by your map on the left. And then you have an aerial image on the right. And again, commissioners, we can flip back and forth to these maps as necessary. When I show you the plats, it'll kind of refresh your memory on what we're talking about. What I want to do first, commissioners, is briefly go through some of the history on the site. Verandas is a bit odd because there are 4 phases that have preliminary plat approvals. Phases 2 and 4 are constructed, and they have final plat approval and recorded plats and houses going up like mad. Now, what's on your screen right now is phase 1 and 3. That has preliminary plat approval. Those have not been built. None of that has been constructed. Also, to get your bearings, where if you can follow my cursor, that is the area of 3 Circle Church. Phase 1, phase 3, this area is undeveloped and is shown on the preliminary plats as future development. And also, commissioners, I'll flip back there. Phase 1, and again, these are not recorded plats, so this is a quick count by me. Phase 1 had 53 lots. Phase 3 had 26 lots. So on the west side, you've got phase 1 and phase 3. On the east side, you have phase 2 and phase 4. Phase 2 and phase 4 are those that have houses under construction. This labels it out a little bit better, commissioners. Again, you see State Highway 104. And this is what is proposed and what is under consideration tonight. You can see I've labeled phase 2 and 4 of Verandas. I've labeled Tracery subdivision as well as River Horse subdivision. So this would be 49 lots that would encompass the entire undeveloped area on the west side of the wetland area. Now this shows the entire development. What we have here is, you see the drawing's been cut in half with a match line. So what you see there, the area in pink, is the first 14 lots. Those are proposed for phase 1 with the balance below. And then this is the other side of the match line. Commissioners, this area in light red or pink, I'll explain the significance of that on a future slide, and we can come back to this as necessary. So commissioners, what we're looking here is amending the approved village site plan for the west side of Verandas. So commissioners, here's the basic data. Here's the basic data of that. Of course, Mr. Trey Cordy with Verandas LLC is the developer. We've discussed where it is. Commissioners, this is extremely low development density, 0.28 units per acre. So commissioners, you'll be happy to learn that there's really no need to conduct a density analysis on this particular development.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I paused on purpose. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Phase 1, 14 lots. Phase 2, 35 lots. Dewberry Engineers is the engineering firm handling this case. Commissioners, we're recommending tabling, and I think the best way to go through this in an expeditious fashion is just simply to review the list of issues. Commissioners, understand this is a village subdivision, so therefore that is the means by which a developer may request certain things that do not necessarily comply with the subdivision regulations. So we'll just simply go through this list, and we can come back to it and discuss it at whatever detail is necessary. We are recommending tabling due to the following issues. We'll begin, there's not a street stub shown, and you can see the article in section where that's required for connectivity purposes. Staff believes a street stub aligning with the other side of Blueberry Lane is beneficial for future connectivity. Staff notes the applicant maybe should consider some of the other surrounding properties for connectivity. We list the parcel numbers there. We don't have any correspondence with Baldwin County. This is unzoned and would have to also go through the Baldwin County subdivision process. The setbacks they're requesting, 50-foot front setbacks and so forth, certainly exceed the county setback requirements, but the county may have some input there. You have a 50-foot right-of-way that will not have any, that will have no curb and gutter. There will be a horse trail and pedestrian path adjacent to, but outside of the right-of-way, because we really didn't go through that in great detail in the drawings. The request is for a gated development, and the streets are to remain private. This is significant in a number of reasons. From a county standpoint, This would be Baldwin County Solid Waste that would have to pick up the waste material in this development, so they would probably have some input on having a gated community in this area in their service territory. Some other issues, they're requesting to not furnish green space. The subdivision regulations require 10% green space, and it's certainly understandable because of the lot size, but that is the requirement of the subdivision regulations. In this case, the Planning Commission may want to consider some type of restriction on re-subdivision, and I think in a village subdivision setting that may be an appropriate consideration. I've left a placeholder in there for the Planning Commission to talk about the gated development. Another issue is this exceeds 30 units. I won't go on ad nauseum, Commissioners, but we've discussed this many times before. That triggers usually requiring having a second entrance, which we don't have here. I think could be added to deal with fire code requirements. Another option would be to have a note on the plat requiring that all the homes are sprinkled. Also, Commissioners, we want to memorialize that the wetland ordinance, this is in the territory where the Fairhope wetland ordinance is applicable, and that this village subdivision shall not override that wetland ordinance. The area that I showed earlier, that I called out, this light red area appears to encroach upon a wetland buffer, and so that will have to be adjusted to comply with the wetland ordinance as well as the subdivision regulations. Village subdivision requires renderings and elevations of structures. We don't have those, and the applicant stated that these will be, the intent is to provide custom homes, and the applicant indicated that he would like to explain that to the Planning Commission in lieu of furnishing drawings. The applicant also indicated that the entrance sign feature would match that of verandas phase 3 and 4. This development does not propose sidewalks within the development, but has indicated that they would install sidewalks along State Highway 104, and that would also include a footbridge across the wetland crossing between what is now phase 1 and 3 and phase 3 and 4. Commissioners, utilities, several issues on utilities. Fairhope Public Utilities, their comment is that if natural gas service is desired, gas mains shall be installed by the developer by qualified personnel. Fairhope Public Utilities advises they must have, if this is approved as a gated community, they must have 24/7, 365 access to the development. A Knox box will not satisfy that requirement, so Fairhope Utilities reserves the right of approval of their means of 24/7, 365 access. That would be a condition of approval should the Planning Commission wish to approve this tonight. We don't have any correspondence from Riviera Utilities about how they would handle access to this if it were gated. We note that all the proposed lots exceed 20,000 square feet. Now that's sufficient size for septic service. We do call to the developer's attention that sanitary sewer service is nearby and available. Some standard comments, Commissioners. We won't dwell too much on that, but I will call out to the Commission that the normal 50-foot interval for planting street trees is proposed at 100 feet, which is probably appropriate for this size of development. This does fall within the police jurisdiction, so therefore the tree ordinance does apply. And when we got to a preliminary plat, there would be some review by the horticulturalist. Let's see, the sign ordinance would apply, and if it's the pleasure of the Planning Commission to approve this village subdivision, whether it be tonight or at a future meeting, staff would request that we render the preliminary plat approval for phase 1 and 3 null, void, and of no effect. Commissioners, this is not in your packet, but after contemplating a bit further, I wanted to at least memorialize for the purposes of this meeting that staff reserves the right to defer review of preliminary plats related to this development until a village subdivision site plan has been approved by the Planning Commission, and so that we know all provisions of the approval have been incorporated into the village subdivision, so that way we can review it against a preliminary plat. Commissioners, quite a number of items. Happy to answer questions on behalf of staff. Happy to refer back to any drawing or any of the points that you've just seen.
I've got a question for you, Buford. This is Art. With all of what you just went through that are issues associated with this subdivision, I'm just kind of curious, why is this in front of us tonight?
Commissioner, that is an excellent question, and the answer is this is a village subdivision. This is the conduit by which this type of development is requested, and as staff, we point out things that we believe will be issues, because we're not just reviewing a subdivision, we're also reviewing utilities, we're also reviewing connectivity, et cetera, et cetera. And so though we as staff may not necessarily agree with the request, a village subdivision is the method by which those requests are made to the governing body, in this case, the Planning Commission.
Yeah, but that's all right, go ahead. I just think there's a lot of, it seems to me there's a lot of that y'all could have taken care of before we got to this stage.
I agree with Art, but I think some of it, they might be looking for input.
I think so.
Things
Yeah, I
like
agree with
connectivity
you.
from
That's
us, and
right.
I tell you, with the exception of when RSA was holding, 9 high-rise buildings over our head, I don't think we've ever approved a connected, a gated subdivision in my tenure. Because, we've had 3 different groups of professionals that have come to us and all said that connectivity is the most important thing that you have. Where people have more than one way in and out of subdivisions, so people don't all have to, get out on Highway 104. To your extent, to your question, like, on voting day Tuesday, if you'd been going to the left, you'd sure as heck want another connection to Blueberry Lane or somewhere else.
I want to know how do you deal with fire, police, and utilities and everybody else that's got to service a subdivision like this?
They have, like, the siren can open it, or they give them the combination, or a
Not an
control.
emergency.
But in an area like ours, your chance if you're murdered in Baldwin County is that it's from a friend, acquaintance, or family member by about 98.6% of the time. So having a gate actually makes you more dangerous.
Man, I got a lot of relatives like that.
I know. Yeah. So having a gate makes it more dangerous trying to get the ambulance.
I'm a lot higher than that.
It's more dangerous to be in a gated community in our area than to not be gated, because it slows the services down.
Well, I just wonder, but for all the people that you've got to get, I just don't say how you do it.
I can.
You're gonna get your chance.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go ahead and, since Buford's finished, if you want to go ahead and present on your behalf, Trey, go ahead. Are you, or do you have somebody from Dewberry? All right, come on.
All right, so the staff is recommending tabling a bunch of issues, but we'll just jump straight to the big one, the gated community. Since y'all have such a problem with it, we won't request a gated community, which will take away half of those items on the list.
If you got it all, if you can explain to us how
No, that's
works.
fine. No, that's fine.
That was my biggest issue, is the gated community, because I think with the 3-acre lots, and I'm Mr. Sidewalk, with the 3-acre lots, I don't have a, real big issue with anything else. I don't know about the other commissioners. John?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is, Mr. Court, in your letter answering some of these things, you state that codes or guidelines, they're requirements. In fact, they're the minimum requirements for a safe installation, and they have been adopted by ordinance.
For what you were?
I'm talking about your request not to have a second entrance.
Okay. Well, I'd like to, address a few of these items and see what y'all would say.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's
Okay.
do your presentation.
So the first thing I want to state is that we already have approval for 131 lots with preliminary plats ready to go, and we could get going on those. So the reason I bring that up is I would like y'all consider this and not table it, but also I do not want y'all to approve something that I'm not agreeable to and change my village subdivision that I already have. So I'd like to, before y'all approve anything, I want to make sure that I agree with the conditions y'all have. Otherwise, I don't want that to happen.
I just think that might be one reason that we should table this, and you can kind of work it out with staff after you get some input, and then you would kind of know, based on the recommendation, what they were recommending. But
You talking about
I've already met, I met
all
with
these
staff
issues?
twice already, so I don't understand that issue, so anyway.
All these things that Buford's just shown us right here, you think, is that what you're gonna talk about, all of those?
Yes, and those have already been addressed with staff, so I'm not sure why we got to table it and go back and talk with staff again, because
Why are they in front of us in terms of an issue then? If
I
y'all
don't,
already
I'm surprised that they are. Can I go through the list real quick?
Go ahead.
Okay. The first of all is, let's talk about the green space. No, I do not. I am requesting in my original request that we don't have the 10% green space. Every lot in here is a minimum of 3 acres. Some of them go up to almost 6 acres. We have approval for 131 lots by right with the rest of the property to the south that has not been added to the village subdivision. We can add another 201 approximately lots with 100-foot wide lots. So by right, we can go ahead and put 350 lots out there.
I think that's.
I'm one of the
reasonable
few
request.
persons ever, I'm sure, who's come back and said, hey, we'd like to put 49 lots here
We've had
instead.
it happen a few times, but not very many.
Not often. So, you know, but please take that into consideration as well.
Yeah.
The reason we can do that is we need to have some of these rules and regulations, I don't know what you call them, waived, because we're not asking them to be waived, because this is a village subdivision, so we're kind of just making up our own zoning rules as we go.
Sure.
So, not to have the 10% green space. If we had the 10% green space at 17.8 acres that I would have to have out there, why does anybody need extra green space when you have a 3-acre lot? You don't need any area to walk your dogs and have kids play. You can do it all on your own property. Plus, it's hardship is 6 acres. That's 6 lots I got to remove, $1.2 million. That's a significant hardship, and we wouldn't be able to do the development. We would have to go back. We have to go back.
This isn't a hardship. This is what the village subdivision's for, so it's
Right.
not- you don't have to have a hardship. This is just kind of,
So most of those items also would go away by, we won't do the gated entrance. We went and talked to the people. We have 11 reservations right now. Talked to everybody, and everybody except one said, that's fine. If we want to gate our own property, is that allowable? We said, yeah, that's fine. So so that removes a bunch of these items that Buford brought up here.
can you address the Blueberry Lane?
Yeah, the Blueberry Lane, couple items there. I've developed a lot of projects. Y'all have made me stub out to a bunch of other subdivisions or even just vacant property. Without exception, every single time when they go to open them up, the residents of that adjacent property scream, holler, and no one ever ties into them. And I've seen that happen otherwise. To me, they're just streets to nowhere. In this particular case, it's to wetlands that ties into Blueberry Lane. It's 400 feet of wetlands. There's no sense in it. Why would you ever open that up? Because all that will do is it's going to create a cut through from Fairhope Avenue through the estate section, which is supposed to be rural, big lots, we're having horses, and all of a sudden you're going to have everybody from Fairhope Avenue cutting due west to hit due north to hit 104, and that will destroy the subdivision. Not only that, AlDOT will see that, and they're going to make me widen the entire 104, which is about $350,000. Right now, we don't have to have any turn lanes based on the traffic analysis we just had.
The thing to me is, that's fine to talk about what you got to do on 104. To me, it's all about the wetlands. It doesn't make any sense to destroy wetlands to do a tie into a street like Blueberry Lane. It doesn't make any sense.
Traditionally, we have not made people stub out to wetlands in most cases. There's a few unusual cases like the last one that we had, because you're talking about 600 lots and one entrance and exit. Traditionally, we have not on smaller subdivisions made people stub out to wetlands, even though I would have liked to have been able to go to Blueberry Lane when I had to go around the back way to vote the other day. It would have been nice for me.
Well, my option to that is Lawrence Road, there's a dead end into those same exact wetlands, and if you ever want a cross through, it should be there and connect the two Lawrence Roads together, and then we have a real cut through. So I think that destroys everything, having that stub out.
I agree. I'd love Lawrence Road to be connected at some point, kind of like we did County Road 13.
Yeah.
He mentioned no further subdivision of the property, and we have that in our covenants and restrictions, so these are the lots there we're requesting, that's it, done. So, he mentioned one of those streets, and look, he said appeared that was in the 30-foot wetland buffer. That will be moved outside of that buffer, so that won't be an issue. Sidewalks, the original subdivision that we have, original village subdivision that we have approved has a sidewalk all across 104 where we will put that. We're requesting no sidewalks within the subdivision itself. One, we're trying to make this deal work, and that isn't a significant cost, but we also going to have horses, so what we would like to do is have a 10-foot outside of the right-of-way, 10-foot place where the horses can walk. It will also, so it's basically going to be maintained flat grass, but it'll be an area where people could jog and that kind of stuff. But with a limited amount of traffic in there, we're requesting that. The street trees, we're requesting from 50 foot to 100 foot. We're going to put large red oaks. One day they're going to grow large. Obviously when we plan they won't. We'll put those in. So we're requesting just the street trees to be 50 foot on. 100 foot on center. Let's see here. We are requesting septic tanks. He said the sewer is available on 104. However, that is an extraordinarily financial hardship to put gravity sewer and would have to put 2 lift stations and all that. Grinder pumps, we've been told if you have a grinder pump tray, we are not buying your property, and that has now recently come to a bigger problem since the hurricanes. People have realized grinder pumps are absolutely horrible, and we don't want to put, so the option would be septic tanks. And on 3-acre pieces of property, we'd have to have the septic tank, the perk test performed, but I'm sure we've been told that it'll be all right. And then the county, he mentioned the setbacks. We're requesting 100-foot front setback, 50 rears, 25s on the side. The county setbacks are much less than that. We want to make them more. So if we go with the county setbacks, which are like 30 feet, we don't want that. We want to push the houses back for aesthetic reasons and other things. So I don't see where that's a problem. No curb and gutter, of course. Again, that's for aesthetic reasons, and it also is for cost reasons, but we're trying to maintain a country road look for these large lots. Just like kind of down in the polo field area, they have that look. That's what we're trying to do. And I think that's it. So those are the items I wanted to request, and please don't table it. We would like to vote.
Yeah, my biggest issue, I don't know about the other commissioners, my biggest issue is that, it's not gated and that, there's some connectivity. And with these, in that area, Art always complains about the traffic at 104 and dropping 100 lots and having 3-acre lots. We don't see a lot like this. Most of what we see is like what you saw earlier, a PUD to try to figure out how many lots we can possibly get on a piece of property. And the thinner we slice the pie, the more pieces we have to sell.
Yeah, kind of like your cousin.
But anyway, one of the reasons we're doing this, we're like, well, Troy, why are you going opposite? Is because we had such demand for this. We said, well, let's do it, and
certainly,
let's do it.
One of those things that's needed. It's a great location.
Very neat.
Tell me something. What is that brown on this paper?
Wetlands.
Well, how is it that you've got a wetland situated in here that is right through the middle of a lot? Lots.
Okay, they're on the back. Okay, but in every case, they're on lot lines. But on lots 5 and 6, they go up.
Wait a minute.
Is that where you're talking about?
We're on a different. No, you look at what I'm talking. You see that?
How about this right here, Trey?
They didn't give me one of those. I don't have one.
How about this right here?
What is that?
Going across 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Because it doesn't show up on an aerial photograph.
That is a printing error. That is not.
That I couldn't figure out what it was, and it's got little points on it. It says wetlands to be left natural.
Okay, that isn't here. That is a printing error. This is actually.
This thing. Yeah, I see that one on there. I couldn't figure out what, that's a printing error. Okay, I'm with you. I'm good. I'm good.
That's cool. All right, Trey, I'll go ahead, since you're here, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing and then close it, and we can get down to brass tacks at that point.
But again, I'd just like to before you approve something, I want to make sure it's what we're requesting, like you take off the, because I don't want y'all to change what I already have, and.
You can sit there and you can jump up and say, I want a table, if it looks like it's going south. When I say, further, I'll say further discussion, and you can say table, if you want, all right. All right, go ahead, I'm opening the public hearing at this time. Would anybody from the public wish to speak to this item? Well, I'd like to go ahead and turn it back over to the commissioners. Close the public hearing and turn this back over to the commissioners.
Emily, do you have, what Trey just talked about, do you have all that down? You got that in a memorialized somehow, so we don't have to sit here and make him hurt himself trying to think about what he just said?
I have a lot. Won't be gated, and that would address most of the concerns. He doesn't want to overwrite the village approval he currently has with something he doesn't agree with. 3-acre lots, no green space. It would take 17 acres, possibly gate individual properties. Blueberry Lane stub outs become streets to nowhere, and it's wetlands. AlDOT will require more at 104. Lawrence Road stubbed out to wetlands would make more sense to connect there. Keep sidewalks along 104, but not interior. Have horse trail in lieu of sidewalks. Planting red oak, so requesting 100 feet apart. Septic tanks, no grinder pumps. Gravity would cost more. Setbacks increasing from the county requirements to 100 front, 50 rear. Was it 20 side?
I don't think that needs to go in because that's in excess of what the county requires.
25. Okay. No curb and gutter for aesthetics. Does that pretty much cover them all?
No, this is John.
John is.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah. There was one that, in order to meet fire code requirements, you need a second entrance.
Yeah.
And that's not a guideline, that's a requirement. I mean, you can talk to the fire authority having jurisdiction and talk something out with them if they can get by with one entrance, but as of now, without that second entrance, I can't approve it.
Mr. Chairman, if I can jump back in here, if you still have, you should still have the phase 1 drawing on screen. If you'll notice between lots 11 and 12, there appears to be an area that could be an additional entrance. And commissioners and Mr. Cordy understand too, that does not have to be a full-blown gated entrance. That can be just simply a secondary entrance that supports the weight of a fire truck. And we've had that a couple times on recent developments. Laurelbrook has such a feature. So that's one option for getting past the fire code requirement. The other is vetting this through Eric Cortinas, but very well possible that all the dwellings on this development could be fire sprinkled, could be residential fire sprinkled. So those are two options for complying with that and possibly addressing it now so we can move on.
You see what he's talking about, right between lots 11 and 10 and number 12.
Yes, we discussed that with the staff.
Can you extend that out?
We had discussed that with the staff prior to that when you say a second entrance, it's not a paved entrance. In Buford, if I remember right, you said it just has to support the weight of a fire truck, but it could be grass, and however you make it, the engineers would make it stabilize. So we could put it right there as along the east property lines of lot 10 and 11. Basically, with that access to 12, we could make that stable and hard, and so the trucks don't.
Connected to Araya area.
So it's not a true second entrance. It's
just a
fire truck. We can agree to that, yes.
Or if there's a crash at the main entrance, it's a way somebody can drive their car out if their husband's having a heart attack or something.
Yes, we can do that.
It's just a safety issue.
Yes.
And commissioners, that's correct. Mr. Cordy is absolutely correct. And we had almost the identical condition on Laurelbrook is how we satisfied that. So yes, as long, I think the a 75,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating is what's necessary for a fire truck. Yeah, it can be a grass strip as long as a fire truck can get through without getting stuck.
Okay.
I mean, usually that's a stabilized grass strip, like with the grass paved structure.
Yeah, any number of ways they can accomplish that, the plastic grids, etc.
Thank you. John, any more concerns that you have, John?
No, that was it.
Okay, Ken, our attorney, has something to say.
We addressed the issue of not allowing re-subdivision. I know it was addressed that we're going to do that by covenant. And I know it came up earlier in the meeting, but because it's a village subdivision, you do have a little more flexibility to impose specific things. I think you probably could address it by having a condition of approval requiring that when this comes back for subdivision plat approval, that a note to the effect that lots are restricted from further re-subdivision will be on those plats.
So we could say.
Covenants can be changed.
They can be changed, so, and if the covenant's there, then obviously Trey wouldn't mind that. So we could have 2 items subject to no re-subdivision and a second entrance, emergency, second emergency entrance, and then allow, and subject to no gated, and then, as far as
Septic
allow
tanks
waivers to green space, sidewalks,
green
drainage, sewer,
space.
100 feet septic, due to the fact that even though this is a village subdivision, we could put due to the fact that the lots are 3 acres, just as Buford says, to memorialize it, so people know why we made an exception for Trey. So if somebody else comes in with a village subdivision with 9,000 foot lots and wants to waive everything, we'll say, hey, this is the reason we did it.
And Mr. Chairman, there's one final issue.
Yes, sir.
And that is, we talked about it earlier, is since it appears that we won't have the issue of creating a stub street and aligning it with Blueberry Lane, is realigning this street right here to avoid any wetland encroachment. And so I think what you'd be approving is the basic integrity of the development you would be approving. This would just simply be realigned to avoid the wetland area, and and that's just simply a matter of reflecting that in the preliminary plats.
Yes. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Commissioners, any other concerns?
I'm just reading through, Mr. Cordy provided an 11-point letter in response to Buford. I'm just trying to make sure that we've covered everything in that real quick, that we don't leave anything out. Looking through. I think everything's been addressed on there.
Any other concerns? If not, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Okay, so when you say so moved, you
Subject to everything that Emily's
Subject
taking
to-
notes on.
Subject to the re-subdivision, the second entrance, and it not being gated. Those 3 items subject to, and then allowing
Waiver of green
waivers on the
space.
green space, sidewalks, drainage, 100-foot, allowing septic.
Curb and gutter.
No curb and gutter, no side, oh God, I said no sidewalks, I'm gonna break out in hives.
And,
No sidewalk.
And no connection to Blueberry Lane.
Specify
But-
no sidewalks on the interior.
But with a horse trail.
On the interior, but there will be sidewalks on 104, and also they will have their horse right of way.
Yeah, 10-foot horse trail.
10-foot horse trail. Trey,
Yes.
you're not looking to withdraw now. All right, I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Wait a minute, Rebecca, did you second that?
She did.
Yes.
All right, and Rebecca's got that.
Any further discussion? And I just like to say under further discussion, it is rare that we go to 3-acre lots. And I love seeing us having some stuff that's a little larger every now and then. And it's nice that we can work with developers to do that. Any more further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All
Mr.
right.
Chairman, before we move on, can I address the Planning Commission for just one moment?
Yes, sir.
So on this particular development, because of the complexity of the development, if Emily wouldn't mind, and the chairman, and if it's the chairman's pleasure, well, let's just memorialize in the meeting minutes This is a bit of a complicated development, so there may be some cleanup items we discover at the time of the preliminary plats that we can reflect any conditions of approval if necessary. There may be some procedural items that in the middle of the meeting we overlooked. So we can do some cleanup items at the time of preliminary plat if necessary.
Okay, and also make sure that, Emily, in there that you put, due to the size of that somewhere in there it reflects the size of the lot, so we know we're not doing something special for somebody.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And thank you, Chairman. And the purpose for that, what we don't want to do is we don't want to we just don't want to cause an unnecessary hardship that would cause going back to the village subdivision again when we can handle something at the time of preliminary plats.
Sounds good, Buford. All right, all in favor?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda, the public hearing to consider non-conforming lots zoning ordinance.
Okay. Joe's got that one coming up. Talk about it real quick, and we can go through as quick as y'all want to, or I can debate it as long as you want to.
Did we get a handout on that?
It's just one sheet.
It's just one page.
Like this, it's a little red line, and this just kind of.
Man, I don't know, out of 365 pages, I wouldn't find that son of a gun.
The second to last page, probably. Or
That's right. That's right.
This is just trying.
Don't ever do this to me again. I couldn't even figure out how they all fit together.
Lee mentioned it. Last week, we closed, and everybody home, and then Emily was scheduled a long time ago to be on Friday. So 3 days there, I missed her, and Buford and I were stuck there, the only people in the building, trying to figure out how to put a packet together. You know your strengths and weaknesses when it comes, and appreciation comes really fast.
I wouldn't even come by if I'd known you were going to do that.
We didn't ask you to come by.
I didn't come to see you, I came to see Emily.
Sorry, I'm getting a little delirious here.
This is more trying to clear something up that some people have questioned the wording.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hunter.
Okay, this is relatively simple. In our section of non-conforming lots, and I'm going to kind of go through here. The highlighted is what I'm going to pull out. You can see the whole section of our zoning code here. As it currently reads, the front setback and on corner lots, the street side setback shall not apply to any lot where the average setbacks in the same block or within 200 feet of the subject lot is less than the minimum setback required for the district. In such cases, the proposed building may be aligned with the buildings existing on either side thereof. Just also note we've got an apostrophe here. This has created some interpretation problems through the years, but it has been applied, as far as I can tell, consistently for 14 years at least. In effect, what this does is someone that is building a new home, vacant lot, demolished lot, or renovations, and next to them is a piece of property that is built for them, it allows them to creep forward a little bit, but it's a laborious process. 200 feet in the same block, they have to go figure that out and then look to either side. So we're wanting a shortcut here. Just go look at what the neighboring properties are. There's a little legal, if y'all really want to get bored, there's some surveying things where we can't use maps to do this, so we have to require a survey to do this now. Here's the black and white section, but I'm going to make it a little easier to read. There's a couple of changes here. The minimum front setback required for the district does not apply. What we're proposing is just looking at the two adjacent lots and using the average of those two, and then, but setting a cap on that. So in no case can it be 5 foot less than the required setback of the district. Show you a quick graphic here, and sorry for the sketch. This was done right before the meeting. Assuming that there's a 35-foot setback, the lot 2 is the new home. One neighbor is 40 foot back, the front building line. Lot 3, their other neighbor is 25, so you take the average of those two, and that new home would have a front building line of 32.5 feet as opposed to 35 feet. This is what is happening today. people debate us on the interpretation, we've been consistent, but it takes a lot more work to get there instead of just doing this. The 5-foot cap is there, so we have creep with some lots changing from front to a street side. There's creep, so 5 foot there. I'm gonna back up one. If there's any questions on fundamentally what we're proposing here, let's handle them now, and then I want to get into a little Scribner's error that I'll correct. No questions? What you have in your packet is this language. I have highlighted the words to change, and what I would ask, if it so is the commission's desire to change setbacks to building lines in these areas, so adopt this or we have to make a recommendation to the council, but do so with this language.
You want to change the building lines to setback?
That's correct.
Hey, Hunter,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, just, and you know, I've suffered through this and had to survey a neighborhood in order to do this on a project.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like a big switch from, you know, within 200 feet or whatever to just the two on either side. I wonder what's the advantage of just doing the ones on either side versus, you know, all of the lots on that block, you know, basically on either side until you hit an abutting street.
Well, and the houses within 200 feet did not trigger any exception to the rule. It just said now you can look at the neighboring lots and figure out the average. So it was just a little more laborious.
Sure, but I know what I'm saying though is we're saying we're the average setbacks of the adjacent lots instead of the adjacent lots on one block, or we went from 200 feet to 2 lots, you know, so to maybe, so it was big. I mean, I don't have a big issue with it. I just wonder, I always thought it made more sense to be on the block.
And that's debatable, and what our logic here is I will get into it very quickly with some surveying laws that were passed in Alabama. We're used to, we could look at maps and say, you know, yeah, you're okay. We have to have that like you went through, and to remove that is what our intent is. The thread, I think that what you're thinking of bigger picture, what does the street look like? I think we're handling that with the last sentence that puts a cap.
Okay. So then do we also need to change the building line up at the front? Are you looking at the average setbacks or the average building lines?
Building lines, the setbacks stay the same, but the building line can come forward. And that's a very minute, very, very infrequently would that ever matter. But technically it is the front building line we're doing. We're not going to have 1,000 different front setbacks all over town.
Yeah. Well, so that, I mean, I'm not to belabor the point, but the minimum front setback required for the district shall not apply to any lot where the average setbacks of the adjacent lots. Is that what you mean, or do you mean the average building lines?
You are absolutely right. Very good catch. I missed one of them, so thank you for that. That should read average front building lines of the adjacent lot or lots.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Rebecca. Any other questions? If not, I'll open the public hearing at this time. All right, I'll open the public hearing. Does anybody wish to speak to this item? In that case, I'll close the public hearing and back to the commissioners.
And this is a recommendation of
the City Council.
I'll make a recommendation that we recommend to the City Council approval.
I've got a motion to recommend approval to the City Council, I assume with the one change that Rebecca called.
That's correct, with Rebecca's change.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
You could put John
There were about 3 of us.
or Jimmy Conyers, whichever one you want to put down.
Get up, yeah.
All right, Hunter, we have old business, I believe, or new business, I don't know what that
New
is.
business, it's kind of both. I think it's been discussed for years. Joe, would you grab the last one, discussing topic, in that folder? Building height was amended in 2017. When I pull this up, I'm going to show you what it used to say and what it currently says, and show you some issues with that. And again, Rebecca is very intimate with this problem, and there's quite a few that are coming up. Let me get to it here, and we'll go through pretty quick on this, but I'm not asking for a zoning change. What I am stating here is we have an issue in our building height, and I think I've got a solution with the interpretations that I can get us through and kind of put a Band-Aid on this, and we can address the answer. But I want to run it by everyone. So at the top is the language for the previous interpretation or definition of building height, and at the bottom is the current. There was two parts that were changed. What's on your screen was the intent of everything that was discussed during these conversations, at least publicly in minutes that I can find. It changed from the highest point of the roof when you're measuring the top part of the height to the mean point of the roof of the building. I don't think there's any concerns with that one. That was the intent. What happened at the base level is the vertical distance measured to the average natural elevation of the lot at the front of the building became average natural elevation of the lot. What that in effect effectually did, and again,
Wait, back up to that.
When we look at this next one, Art, I think this will answer your question.
Oh, no, wait, just a second. Average natural elevation. Okay.
all right. So what that did, and not to scale, quick drawing coming out, but assuming you have a lot with a 30-foot fall, 10 foot to 40 feet, your average natural elevation is 25 feet, which in effect gives you, at the street level, approximately a 13-foot high building to the mean of the roof. That is, I don't think anyone thinks that's the intent. And I have a proposal. We need to deal with this, and there's a couple of other things we can deal with building height. My proposal is to interpret this as kind of a combination of the two for now as a Band-Aid. The vertical distance measured from the average natural elevation of the lot at the front of the building to the mean point of the roof of the building. I think knowing this is a Band-Aid and we have to address this, and it's a priority. It's number 3 on our priority list after subdivisions and, so.
I think that was really kind of what our intent was.
I've went back and watched both the planning commission meetings and the council meetings, and there was never really debate on where you measure the lower. Where that came from was I think, and this is some interpolation here, was a blend to try to make that match more with what the building code says. But building code kind of deals with a little bit more finished elevation is kind of how they look at. So I don't think we thought about these deep lots. We definitely have to deal with steep lots. We have to deal with lots that are in floodplains and height. We have to deal with downtown. We have to deal with all those things.
What's the front of the building?
Well, you're going to have a frontage on the road, so that's defined.
Necessarily. The front ain't on the road, it's back, anywhere on the back.
If you change it to building line, which is what we
Front
currently
building
have,
line.
which is what we currently have defined, is building
Well,
line.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear Art. Was he suggesting you do it at the setback instead of the front of the building?
The front building line.
I'm saying that the front of the building is not necessarily on the road.
Well, and that's a good point.
No, we defined it as on the road, don't we?
No, there's a reason I think this is distinguished from and has been historically, because take away now that one example of one lot, one house. This hurts somebody that has 20 acres and is building a shopping center, a mall, or a hospital, or multiple things like that, where there might be multiple buildings, you take the average natural elevation of that lot, and, you know, that can really tweak. So front of the building, you know, this is one of those things that you can keep going, and that's why we need to
Now,
address.
Hunter, you said that, you know, this is something that we really need to address on number 3. What are you asking us tonight for your short-term mandate?
Kind of where the front door is right now, that's where we have an architectural plan. Where that
Would like to
is,
say street side so that it's not the water side. I haven't thought that fully through, but is the street side, we're trying to preserve the neighborhood character.
I'm okay with that. We can add, the average natural lot at the front of the street, the street side of the building.
That doesn't cover everybody. Doesn't cover all the instances. Why is it just not at the building line?
Because the lot could slope significantly up from the building line.
Rear building line?
Go back, no, it just the front just call it the front building line. If you go back to your little drawing that you just had, there's the front, I'm assuming the front of the house is where the 13 is?
Yeah, roadside.
So, I mean, that's roadside, but it would either, maybe you could just add in there, roadside, or in the case of bayfront property, the bay side. Because all the bay houses, the front of the house is on the bay, facing the bay. On the river, the back of the front of the house is face the road. So you get, I mean, that covers everything else.
You care about the height facing the road. You don't want to allow them to
And it is a
have
little different. Our
smaller facing the road.
setback, front yards are on the water side, but,
Yeah,
you know.
the height's more addressing the road of what other people see. And the bay is not as big of an issue because we don't have that much elevation on the bay in most of Fairhope, other than
In the gullies.
Mobile
The real
Avenue
streets.
up front. Well, this is why he's trying to get.
Well, and I mean, Mobile Avenue, yeah, but I mean, go up, what are the streets over there, Gayfer and Tennessee or whatever that is, Pensacola?
He's just trying to get a
Yeah.
mandate to get us.
Oh,
to
and
the next couple
you're
of
right. I mean, I guarantee it, the rest of the staff are not here in front of you, and they're chuckling because we get into these conversations and you keep going with building.
Yeah, you go to
Building
Pensacola,
height.
go to
Building
Pensacola
height.
Avenue and all those places up there on the north side of town, it's a lot different.
No, this needs to be addressed for real with like probably, a proposal, but he's
There's
just looking
so
for.
many things we
he's
need to.
looking-
Put a Band-Aid on it.
He's looking right now
address,
for a Band-Aid because we
with
got people
multiple
wanting
roof
building
lines
permits.
too, but
Just
I,
2 blocks.
for whatever
down.
it's worth, this seems like a good stopgap measure.
Okay. And we're not having to correct the language, so everything you're telling me goes into what we're saying, what we're interpreting that. But in general, for most of them, if we're on the street side or the front of the building line, I think that's pretty clear for what I can do in the short term.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say, so our actual definition of building line is the actual line at which a building on a lot is constructed.
And that could
So-
be anywhere.
Right.
And on a sloping lot, it can be different.
So, but under our definition of front is so we have lot line front on an interior lot.
What if you,
The narrowest dimension facing the street.
what if you've got a sloping lot facing the street?
Oh, we got them.
Coming to the street?
We got them. I mean,
so if you go.
Rock Creek's got, go in Rock Creek. There's a bunch of houses
Okay.
there.
That's a good point, Rock
All right,
Creek.
so lot line front. On an interior lot, the lot line abutting a street. On a corner lot, the shorter lot line abutting a street. On a through lot, the lot line abutting the street providing the primary means of access to the lot. On a flag lot, the interior lot line most parallel to and nearest the street from which access is obtained. Or on a waterfront lot, the lot line abutting the water.
Sound like y'all covered.
That's lot lines. We're talking about building.
Right, but it defines in the word
Where you start
building
from.
line.
Yeah.
it references, if you say
Well,
front,
But then you're not dealing.
But that, on waterfront lot, that covers the bay, you've covered the bay, what about, the creek or the river?
Yeah, well, again, I think we need.
The river has the back of the house fronts, I mean,
Listen, we can be here with exception
Yeah.
to 1 AM, and I'm already
Yeah.
planned in.
I'm with you.
If Hunter's happy with
Nobody-
this for a Band-Aid to get us for about 8 weeks till he's got something detailed, I think would be cool.
okay, you got your Band-Aid?
Y'all got it? Y'all agree, everybody out there on the internet? Other planning commissioners or any disagreement?
Yeah, 'cause this isn't a motion, this is just kind of a.
This is discussion.
He just wants people, to feel comfortable that he's not, out there the Wild West, making law himself.
Okay.
That just everybody kind of agrees that was the intent.
That's good.
As long as you not let them go up to here and then put their elevator on top of that.
I mean, this is where we're going when we start talking about building height. It just keeps going. So there's a lot of ways to deal with it. We'll come back. We might have to have a work session or something and talk about all those options people use. And we'll get to a final answer that satisfies 80% of the stuff. Because then we're going to have surprises and somebody's going to.
All
All right.
What else you got?
2 more items. We have election of officers. And we have the 2021 agenda schedule and deadlines.
Can I make a motion on election of officers, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion, we keep the the officers as they are right now.
Second.
I'll second.
And there's a second coming all over the place.
I've got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Ask if they wanted it.
Any opposed, say nay. Oh, John, do you have any comments?
I just said, did anybody ask those officers if they still wanted the job?
Oh, sure, I'm all right. Rebecca?
I mean, it's not entailed anything at this point, so sure, but I might, I wonder if John's interested in it.
Too early.
And I quit. Just kidding.
Okay, can I make a motion on
Yeah.
the next one?
We have a motion, a second. Any, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Sorry, Rebecca.
Yeah, you see what happens when you don't show up,
I'll try
right?
not to get coronavirus.
You see what happens when you don't show up?
I'll be there with masks on next time.
Yeah.
Does everybody see Emily's, the Fairhope Planning Commission deadlines for 2021?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do I have a motion for that?
So move.
Second?
I second.
All right. Any further? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay.
Please note, 2 of those meetings will be on Thursdays.
Yeah, well, you didn't send us a note this time.
All right.
You get
Do
it
I-
now.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I got one more little item.
Oh, I got a motion to adjourn. That's-
No, I got one item. You gotta do something about if we're gonna continue to have, virtual meetings, people not be here, we gotta do something about the acoustics in here. I cannot hardly hear any of these people. And you imagine we start getting a few people showing up in here, you ought to be able to hear anybody.
I think last month we talked about that we were targeting kind of getting back into the real world this month, with people here, and then last week happened and we were scrambling, so.
Well, if we're gonna come back, that's fine, don't worry about it, but if it's gonna continue like this, we gotta do something else, because we gotta be able to hear what anybody that is off in the rural never land.
I really like the idea of people meeting because it's, the people here more kind of dominate the meeting than the people online. And I think there's more input if all of the, if all the members of the commission are here. But on the other hand, if anybody's, concerned about the health or what have you, having an option. Also.
Well, but we could actually move.
This is John. I have a concern. Not only am I old, I also have some underlying conditions. So I'm actually quite scared to get out too much in public.
I understand. So we can kind of maybe,
We move around, we
Make sure
spread
do
out.
this and get some-
We got it.
get
I got a
some volume.
chainsaw, cut this thing right here in pieces, and we can just move it around the room.
Commissioner Dias, we can hear you clearly.
All right, all in favor
Bet
of
you
adjourn,
can,
say
brother.
aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all.